CD4. Carrie was back in the cramped office allotted to the auditors before the men. As she'd eaten only half her lunch, she sat down and took out another sandwich as they came in. "Not eaten yet?" Tim Redwood asked. "What have you been doing all lunchtime?" "I went out shopping." She felt wide awake and more alert. She powered through the job she was doing and was given another. The men seemed soporific after their heavier lunch. That afternoon, Carrie studied Gerard's files and ledgers more closely than she had any others. She was very interested in his business. Halfway through the afternoon, one of the shop's staff brought in a tray with a cup of tea for each of them. Afterwards, Carrie piled up the used crockery and set out to return it to the staff kitchen. She wanted to see more of Jerry's premises, find out more about him and everything he did. It was quite an old building, with a warren of narrow passages. She was passing 2 doors marked private in very large letters when she met the girl who'd brought them the tea. "What goes on in these rooms?" she asked. She was curious and had been told that a good auditor should question everything. "Mr. Milner does jewellery repairs in there. He can design jewellery for you if you want something special. Nobody else is allowed in. The rooms are kept locked because there's bits of gold lying about, and even a tiny bit is worth a lot of money." Later on, Gerard Milner came in to speak to Bill Brown. Some sixth sense seemed to tell Carrie he was near and make her look up. His dark eyes were watching her. Was he flirting with her? Yes, she thought he must be. How could she help but smile at him? But her colleagues had noticed. "Wow, I think he fancies you," Robbie Wilson chortled when he'd gone. "Stay clear of him," Mr. Brown ordered sternly, conscious of his responsibility as team leader. "He's off limits. Mr. Groves would not want a clerk of his getting involved with a client. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Carrie said. But when she went to bed that night, Gerard Milner was very much on her mind. She knew it was important to toe the Atherton and Groves line, and she wanted the senior staff to approve of what she did, but Gerard Milner had already bewitched her. She felt strongly attracted to him, even though he was quite old. He was a successful man, the owner of a profitable business. Surely he couldn't be interested in her. Perhaps she'd misread the signals he was sending out, and they did not mean what she'd supposed. The next morning she took extra care with her hair and wore her best blue dress to work. All morning she looked out for him, but didn't catch so much as a glimpse. At lunchtime, no sooner had the men gone out and she'd opened up the serviette in which Prue wrapped her sandwiches than Jerry came looking for her. She was delighted. "How about bringing your lunch up to my kitchen?" he said, "and I'll make us a cup of coffee. I enjoyed your company yesterday, so why not do it again?" Carrie was eager to follow him up, but she could do no more than nod. She felt very daring, because she'd been warned off him, and she knew that going to his private quarters would bring down Mr. Groves's wrath on her head. In the kitchen she sat down at the table again. "I'm not as organised as you," he began, cutting slices from a loaf to make himself a sandwich, then getting out a jar of gentleman's relish. "I've never heard of that," she said. "What is it?" "A good old-fashioned standby for sandwiches. Here, have a taste." He seemed relaxed. It was as though they'd known each other for years. I think I prefer my bloater paste and lettuce," she said. "You must find it handy living here. It's very central for shopping and everything." "Very handy for doing more work," he said. "My office being just 1 floor down from my sitting room. I'll show you round when we've eaten." That made Carrie's cheeks burn. She knew she shouldn't be chatting to him like this, and she certainly shouldn't see more of his flat, but she couldn't bear to turn down his invitation. There was nothing she wanted more than to see it all. He asked her where she lived, and she told him about her aunts Prudence and Maud who'd brought her up because her father was working abroad. When he took her to his sitting room, a large square room with 2 big windows looking down 5 stories to Lord Street, she said, "It's lovely." It was furnished with antiques and 2 enormous modern sofas, and the same thick carpet as the shop. "You might as well see more of it now you're here," he said, and threw open 2 more doors, revealing a very masculine bed covered with a heavy, dark quilt, and a bathroom beyond. Closed the doors again quickly, as though understanding her embarrassment. "Just bachelor accommodation," he said, moving her back to the sitting room. "I'll make that coffee, and we'll have it in here. You can keep me company." "I can't," she said, catching sight of the ormolu clock on the mantelpiece. "I've got to get back to work. I'm only allowed an hour." "Sorry. Tomorrow, then? I mustn't upset Dougie Atherton." "It's Mr. Brown who mustn't know," Carrie said. "He's my team leader. But we won't be here tomorrow, and possibly not the next day either. He's taking me to stocktake at your branches in Woolton and Egbert." Robbie Wilson and Tim were going to the other 2 branches. "But you will be here on Friday?" "Yes, we'll be back as soon as we've finished." Gerard walked with her to the door. Before she realised his intention, she felt his arms pull her close, and his mouth came down on hers in a real lover's kiss. It left her breathless and wanting more. "Friday, then," he whispered. Carrie knew she was falling in love. At last it was happening for her. It was what she'd dreamed of, what she'd longed for. She felt on top of the world. Chapter 9. At 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, Archie was woken by the telephone ringing in the hall below. Beside him, he felt Marion stir, but he knew she wouldn't get up to answer it. He heaved himself off the bed, pulled the eiderdown round him, and padded downstairs. It was Rod. "I'll be back with you tomorrow," he said. "I've got to take you to meet those last few jewellers." "I'm afraid we've arranged to work tonight," Archie said. "Oh? Where?" Archie had to think for a moment. "Fletcher's in Manchester." "Good. Then on your way home tomorrow morning, you could come through Rainhill and pick me up? 2 of the shops are near here, so we could do those." "We won't be on top form after working all night." "You'll be able to shake hands and smile, Archie. We can see Gerard Milner the next day." "How's your mother?" Archie asked. "I hope she's doing well now." He heard Rod sigh. "Oh, not very. She's been up and down and went back to hospital once. But she's stable now and I think picking up. As you know, I've had to keep delaying my return to Joburg. I can't leave her here like this. I've booked us both on next week's boat. Fortunately, everything seems to be ticking over well there." "You're lucky there's a weekly mailboat sailing," Archie said. "I am. Tomorrow morning, then. Come and pick me up on your way home, but not before 9. Archie wasn't pleased. They all hoped to be home early when they worked at night. "You could get yourself some breakfast before collecting me," Rod went on, as though reading his thoughts. "There's a transport cafe at the bottom of the East Lancs Road. It's open all hours, and the food isn't bad." For Archie it was bad news that Rod was coming back, and he crept upstairs miserably. It made him feel a fool that he totally misjudged the work Rod had intended him to do, and he was ashamed that they were getting rich by helping thieves to market their stolen goods. Engagement rings had a sentimental value for their owners that couldn't be replaced with a new ring. He got back into bed alongside Marion, thinking she was still asleep, but her arms went round him, and all his misgivings spilled out. "You poor love," Marion said. "You're living on your nerves. You must learn to relax. Rod isn't here yet." They spent the next hour or so making love, and Archie felt better when they got up to go to work. They were eating scrambled eggs on toast before setting out when Rod rang again. "Change of plan. Don't pick me up tomorrow morning. Mother was sick all over her bed this afternoon, so I got the doctor out again. He says she isn't fit to travel and needs to rest this weekend." "I am sorry," Archie said. "She's having a hard time." "So am I. I've had to cancel our passage and rebook it a week later. I want to take you to meet Milner. We need to start on the work he's got for us. I'll fix a day and let you know." All went well during the stock-taking in the 2 branches, and today Carrie would be back in the Lord Street shop. She was looking forward to seeing Gerard Milner again, but she knew the audit was almost finished, and Mr. Brown would soon be drawing up the final documents. Certainly her services would not be needed in the shop for much longer, perhaps an hour or two tomorrow morning, or the junior work might go on till mid-afternoon. The morning seemed long. Carrie left her desk several times to walk round the shop, but Jerry didn't seem to be about. She was afraid that he might not come to find her at lunchtime. She was in a dither. If she didn't see him today, they wouldn't meet again until next year's audit took place. Even then, she might not be put in the team that was sent to his shop. Lunchtime came and the men left, talking about trying a different cafe. Carrie had no sooner taken her sandwiches from her handbag than Gerard came. He pushed the door closed behind him and took her in his arms to kiss her. For Carrie, it was bliss. "Come upstairs," he whispered. "There's more privacy there." He led her to his sitting room to sit side by side on his sofa. "This time I'm organised," he said. He'd set a tray with his sandwiches and also some delicious-looking cakes. He held her close and kissed her several times. There was something Carrie had to know. "Do you live here by yourself?" she asked. "Yes, you can see I do. It's a small bachelor flat. I find it lonely here on my own." She fully understood that. She told him about her twin sister getting married and how lonely she'd felt since. But his flat was a lot bigger than the one Connie and John shared. He'd shown her only one bedroom, but that had a double bed in it, and there seemed to be more rooms. "You aren't married, then? You don't have any family?" "No, not close family. I have relatives all over the place, but I need friends too." He pulled her close for another kiss. "I think you're gorgeous. I do hope I can see more of you." "We've just about finished the audit," she said. "It's probably my last day here." "I know. We could meet after work. Would you let me buy you dinner?" Carrie's heart seemed to bounce. "That would be lovely. When?" "Tonight, if you like." "Oh, I couldn't. Aunt Prue expects me straight home from work. She prepares a hot meal for me and Aunt Maud." "Or I could take you to the Royal Court. I've heard the show there is good." Carrie hesitated. There was nothing she wanted more. "It's difficult when I haven't let her know. We don't have a phone at home." "You've probably got lots of boyfriends your own age," he said, drawing away from her, disappointment on his face. "Not at all. What about Saturday? I'll be free from lunchtime onwards." Aunt Prue was used to her going out on Saturday nights. She wouldn't probe too deeply. His face fell. "I'm afraid I can't. Saturday is my busiest day and I'm tied up over the weekend. And next week, I'm afraid that is going to be very busy for me too." "What about tomorrow?" Carrie was not prepared to lose this chance. "All right, tomorrow," she said. "I'd love to go to the theatre. That would be a real treat for me." He beamed at her. "I'll get tickets." They made arrangements to meet, and Carrie returned to her desk in the room allotted to the auditors. She'd almost finished the jobs she'd been given when Robbie Wilson said, "Let's drag the work out a bit. If we finish too early, we'll have to go back to the office. If it isn't finalised until 4, we'll probably be told to go home." Tim told the team leader he'd finished, and Carrie said, "So have I." Bill Brown studied the documents they'd been working on. "You can go back to the office now and give these to Phoebe to type up. I need to finish my report and have a word with Mr. Milner before I come. Mr. Hetherington will want to talk to us all later on." At 4:30, they squashed into his office for his summing up. "As you know, we're going to sign off the Milner accounts as correct," Mr. Hetherington said. "But this has been a rather worrying audit, due partly to the fact that the stock is so valuable and none of us have the knowledge to value gems and jewellery accurately. Except for its size, one diamond looks pretty much like another to me. Mr. Milner buys in stones and precious metals from various sources as raw materials, and he has the paperwork to support that. He's designing necklaces, rings and brooches and making them up himself. He has them assayed in Chester before selling them at greatly enhanced prices. All of that is normal business practice. But there's something about Mr. Milner that makes me suspicious. Carrie burst out without thinking. Such as what? Bill Brown had warned her off, but she mustn't let him see how much that had bothered her. Brown thought about that. He seemed unusually edgy to me. The problem is that it's difficult to estimate how much of the precious metal is in the finished piece and how much is left to make up more rings. Mr. Milner invited me to weigh them and provided the scales, but by then stones and metal were inseparable, and diamonds are weighed in carats, pearls in grains, and pure gold in grams. The situation is further complicated because sometimes he works in 9-carat and sometimes in 18-carat gold. I put Robbie on the job to check his figures, but there were dozens of pieces in stock, and Robbie said he wasn't certain he'd got it right. So, with a few small corrections, and after discussing it with Mr. Groves, I felt I had to take the client's paperwork as correct. Carrie was almost biting her tongue off. How could he be so suspicious of Jerry? Everything was so carefully locked up, Robbie Wilson said. It has to be, Carrie said. Even a little bit of gold has value. And it's easy to steal, easy to hide on one's body, Tim said. Yes, and equally easy in those locked rooms for Mr. Milner to hide anything he wanted to amongst the tools in the cupboards and drawers, Bill Brown said. He told me he had to lock up everything for security reasons. He let Robbie and me into both those rooms and watched us like a hawk as we tried to estimate the worth of what was there. In one room, he was melting down gold. Anyway, Hetherington went on, we sampled 1 or 2 pieces, but not all. His business has made a good profit, bigger than ever before, when the depression is resulting in lower profits in almost every other firm. I'm not too happy about that audit. He looks a bit of a ladies' man, and he's certainly a wide boy, Robbie said, and Tim agreed. Carrie could contain her anger no longer. Surely art plays a part once the article is made, and who can put a price on that? Exactly, Hetherington said. But everybody knows that. In workrooms like those, gold dust and tiny trimmings can lie on furniture and floors, and the value can build up into a surprising amount. I should not say this, and it mustn't go beyond this room. But I wonder where he finds all these customers who can afford his high prices. I have a nagging feeling that Mr. Milner is doing something he shouldn't. Carrie was furious with Hetherington for blackening Jerry's name without proof. He was wrong, wrong, wrong. She could not put her mind to anything else. Jerry had seemed so open and sincere. She'd seen no reason to think he was in any way dishonest. Surely she couldn't be wrong. Then she began to wonder whether she should tell him of Bill Brown and George Hetherington's professional opinion. It didn't take her long to decide she couldn't possibly do that. By the next day, the auditor's report and the additional documents were typed up, and Carrie was able to study them. Milner employs a good accountant, Hetherington told them. He knows how to put the best possible gloss on the figures in the balance sheet. But I do wonder if he's leaving any out. When Carrie told her aunts she was going out on Friday night, Prue was not too happy. You know, I don't like you being out late on weeknights, she said firmly. You must get your sleep if you're to do your work the next day, and you need time to study. Maud marvelled. Looky you, invited to go to the Royal Court to see a play about Sherlock Holmes. You'll have a lovely time. Is it being put on by the repertory players? It'll finish about 9:30, Prue. You needn't worry about Carrie being out too late. Carrie found it difficult to decide what to wear. She'd worn her best dress to work, so it had to be her blue twin-set and pencil skirt because Gerard hadn't seen her in those. He'd offered to come and collect her, but if he rang the doorbell it would mean she'd have to ask him in and introduce him to her aunts. They'd expect him to be her age, and it would cause a barrage of questions she didn't want to face. She chose to meet him in town. As she walked up to the theatre, She could see Jerry waiting for her outside the main entrance. What George Hetherington had told the team about him had upset her, and she thought her boss very much mistaken. Jerry looked so gentlemanly, so handsome as he came forward to meet her, threading his way through the crowd gathering for the performance. "Hello, love." He kissed her cheek and took her arm, and she was sure they'd got it all wrong. He had seats on the front row of the balcony, and he held her hand from the moment they sat down. The atmosphere of expectation excited her, and through the first act she was very conscious of his presence beside her. She knew that her attention was on him more than it was on the play. As the interval drew near, the scent of coffee filled the auditorium, and when he took her to the bar, Carrie sipped hers, watching him over the rim of her cup. He hardly took his eyes from her face, and she was sure he was as much in love with her as she was with him. Before the second act started, he said, "I've prepared a cold supper for us when this finishes. I hope you'll come back to my flat and share it with a glass of wine." "I can't," she said. "I really want to, but Aunt Prue expects me to be home before 10 o'clock. That's one of her basic rules. I'd be in dire trouble if I was late." She knew he was disappointed, and she desperately wanted to go to his flat. He tried hard to persuade her. "Just for an hour. I'll run you home afterwards. You need only be half an hour late." It was very hard to say no, but she did. She immediately felt him cooling towards her, and she hated that. "I'm sorry. I'd love to come, but it would upset Prue." He drove her home, but she made him stop the car a few doors from the house. Prue would quite possibly be lifting the curtains every 10 minutes to see if she was coming. "When can I see you again?" he pressed her. "I have so much on over the next few days. I'm afraid it's going to be difficult for me to fit everything in. Monday lunchtime might be possible. How would it be if I drove round to your office and picked you up? I could park somewhere near, and at least we could spend the lunch hour together." "Yes," she said. "That sounds lovely." "I'll bring a picnic lunch for us both." "No, I'll bring my sandwiches," Carrie said. "I don't want Prue to see I'm not taking any. She'll ask a lot of questions." "As you wish." He took her into his arms and didn't seem to care that it was quite a busy road and vehicles were passing all the time. Also, he'd parked near a street lamp, and she was nervous the neighbours might see them. But his kisses were bliss. He pushed his hand up under her twin set, and that gave her the most delicious feeling of all. He told her several times that she was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Carrie heard firm footsteps coming along the pavement and struggled to break free of his arms. By the time she had, the person had passed and was a receding shadow she couldn't recognise. It made her jumpy, but Gerard's arms enfolded her again and quietened her heartbeat. It was well after 10 o'clock when she finally freed herself to go indoors. Prue was frowning and asked what time tram she'd caught. Fortunately, Maud was in a good mood. It seemed she'd just come home from some meeting with her teaching colleagues, and she wanted to hear about the play. Carrie felt guilty and wondered if it had been Maud who had passed Gerard's car on her way from the tram stop, but her aunt's eyes were kind and gentle, and she made no mention of it. It felt wonderful to get into bed and relive that evening. Carrie felt euphoric. She was in love with a man who was equally passionate about her. Jerry Milner was a man she could be proud of, a man who had already achieved something in life. She knew exactly what profit he'd made from the thriving business he'd built up, because she'd worked on his accounts. Connie had seemed to be streaking ahead of her on life experience, but now she had a chance of catching her up. She was bursting to tell her twin about Jerry. But it was no longer easy to talk to Connie without John being present, and John knew Gerard. She'd already asked him if he'd ever worked on his accounts, and it seemed that he'd been part of the team that had audited them last year. She didn't want John to know that she and Jerry were in love, and she certainly didn't want anybody at Atherton and Groves to know. She'd told Mr. Groves she had no intention of getting married, which at the time she'd believed to be true. But since then, Things had changed dramatically. Gerard was really showing that he loved her and was forcing the pace. He was not going to hang back. In a dreamy haze, she thought of being Mrs. Milner one day, living in that splendid flat and being draped with gorgeous diamonds and pearls. Chapter 10. Every weekend, as soon as Gerard Milner closed his shop on Saturday evening, he drove to Bryn Havard so he could relax all day on Sunday with his family. It meant he had to get up early on Mondays to be back in time to open up, but he counted it well worth it. This weekend had been busier than usual, because Megan's family had been staying with them and he'd had to help and be sociable. He'd kept thinking of Carrie, the sensuous feel of her soft, firm flesh and her springy curls. He'd been unable to get her out of his mind. Friday evening had not gone as well as he'd hoped, but he was not going to give up now. His mind went back to that delicious moment in his car when he'd thought he was getting somewhere with her. He'd taken out all the pins from her sophisticated hairdo and let her hair hang loose so he could run his fingers through it. But then she'd said she daren't go indoors with it like that. Her aunts would be shocked. He'd held her little mirror and her handful of clips and watched her put it up again. Close to her in the car, he could smell her perfume. It was strong and heady and turning him on, yet it was not what was normally thought of as seductive. "What is it?" he'd asked. Carrie told him, but he'd never heard of it. "Do you like it?" "Yes. It's fresh and girlish, and in a way, a little innocent, a bit like toilet soap." "That's putting me off it," she'd laughed. "It was a present from Maud last Christmas." "I shouldn't have said that," he smiled. "It suits you." He hadn't wanted to let her go, but she was determined, a well-behaved girl. He'd gone home alone, climbed the stairs to his flat, and poured himself a whiskey and soda in the sitting room. Then he'd snatched the cloth off the cold supper he'd prepared for her and filled a plate with his favourite delicacies. He would like to be able to phone her and assure her of his affection, but even that was difficult because he could only contact her in her office, where she was surrounded by colleagues who would hear what she said. Carrie set all his senses on fire, and he'd been hoping this would prove a long-term alliance. But he found her frustrating, too. He'd intended to bring this affair to a head, push this infatuation to the limit. She was a virginal teenager, ripe for the picking, but ready and willing to move into the adult world. Really, it was a process of wearing her down. Sooner or later, he was sure she'd give in. He longed to be her guide and teacher, but she was forcing him to wait. Next week it would be difficult to see much of her because he'd arranged to bring his wife Megan and younger son Ivor back with him. They were hoping Ivor would be joining his older brother at Liverpool College in September. Megan was taking him there for what they called an entrance exam at 11 on Monday morning. Really, it was more of an assessment of his capabilities. The headmaster had invited them to have lunch at the school and see their older son play in a cricket match that afternoon. Gerard had thought he could rely on them being out of the way for most of that day, and it would be safe to see Carrie at lunchtime. On Tuesday, Megan would need to rig the lad out in school uniform, and she'd probably want to stay for the best part of the week, to take him round the museums, enjoy a theatre show or two, and buy more clothes for herself. It would be difficult to fit in the time to see Carrie. Sunday night always came too quickly, and as planned, he drove his family back to Liverpool. No sooner had they unpacked and he'd settled down with a nightcap than the phone rang. He wasn't expecting anyone to call. Could it be Carrie? She could have slipped out to a public phone. He leapt to his feet to answer it, almost overcome with guilt and nerves that Megan might hear, but she was seeing Ivor into bed. He was disappointed to hear a man's voice. "Rod Reinhardt here?" "Oh, yes. Hello." Gerard had been expecting a call from him for some time. "How are you?" he asked. "My team is ready and everything is in place now. I'll bring them round and introduce them tomorrow morning, and they'll be able to start work sometime next week." Oh, my goodness. No. I'm sorry, Rod. I rather expected more notice. He lowered his voice. I won't be able to show you all the goods tomorrow. I have some very special pieces that I don't keep here on the premises. It's safer not to, but I'll fetch them next weekend. I can have everything here by a week tomorrow. Gerard, we don't work civil service hours, and I'll not be in England much longer. I know, and I'm sorry. I've been expecting you for ages, and now is a particularly busy time. I've had the auditors in all last week, and my family will be with me most of this week. He heard Rod's sigh of resignation. Monday next week is all right, though? I'll have to ring Marion and change it. What time? Early, say about 10? Shall I just bring them in and ask for you? No, Rod, come to my private entrance at lunchtime. I close the shop at 1 o'clock, and I'd prefer my staff not to see you. I can lay on a little light lunch. There'll be 4 of you, yes? Yes, thank you. How many days' work do you have for us? Well, that depends how quickly your team works. There's quite a lot. They'll come back to do the work after I've returned to Joburg. Right, and you'll have all these special pieces on hand to show us? Yes. See you a week on Monday, then. I look forward to that lunch. Gerard paused uneasily when he'd put the phone down. Suddenly it was all getting too much. He'd enjoyed the frisson of occasionally handling stolen goods or having a girl on the side, but not both at once. He felt on edge. It was making him nervous. Megan knew nothing about his little affairs or about him being involved in Rod's business. He wanted to keep it that way. Suddenly he felt he couldn't cope with the complications of a double life. He wished now he'd not spent so much time last week with Carrie. He'd had little chance to rest. But, in a way, she had breathed new energy into him. From now on, it was important that he kept alert and on top of things. He had to avoid being caught. He knew Rod, of course, but he didn't altogether trust him. Really, he couldn't trust anybody. He poured himself another whiskey. He could bring back enough stuff to keep this team busy for weeks. A pity he couldn't see much of Carrie this week, but it couldn't be helped. Hopefully he'd be able to pick up with her later. She'd seemed keen. Usually on Saturdays, Carrie went to work in the morning and then on to a lecture from the Liverpool Society of Chartered Accountants at 11 in their office in Fenchurch Street. But because she'd worked overtime on 2 evenings, she was given Saturday morning off, which meant she could sleep in. She had an exam coming up and needed to get down to some studying, but she found it a struggle because Gerard Milner was on her mind. Maud had told Archie she'd pop round on Saturday morning with a sleeveless pullover she'd knitted for him. But Prue had involved her in baking for some church fundraising occasion that afternoon, and she'd asked Carrie to take it instead. As Carrie walked down to the tram stop, she spotted the phone box and decided to telephone her father to make sure he'd be at home. "I'd be delighted to see you," he said. "Is Maud coming too?" No, she and Prue are preparing for some church fete this afternoon. She wants me to bring the pullover she's made for you." "Good," he said. "You come round and see us." Marion let her in, welcomed her warmly, and ushered her into the sitting room. "How are you getting on?" her father wanted to know. "Are you still happy as an articled clerk?" "Yes, very happy. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a different life altogether." Carrie caught the flash of Marion's diamonds and took hold of her hand to look more closely at them. "You know all about diamonds, don't you? Tell me how they're valued. Valuation is what accountants are interested in." Marion laughed, took one of her rings off and pushed it onto Carrie's finger. "This is a 2-carat round diamond," she told her. "Brilliant cut." She explained about clarity and colour and brought out her loupe, the magnifying glass jewellers use to examine stones. "See if you can see any imperfections, any cracks or foreign bodies. We call them inclusions, though not all inclusions are bad news. Some enhance the value of a stone." Carrie tried. "I can't," she said. "It looks perfect to me." "It takes a bit of practice," Marion said. There is a small crack. It can be seen about here. She prodded with her fingernail. Not many stones are perfect. I don't think I can see it even now. It's a beautiful diamond. I ought to know more about precious stones and gold, seeing Dad is in the trade. I love them, and they provided me with an interesting means of earning a living in South Africa. Marion smiled. Are you going to look for a job here? Possibly, if I can find something to suit me. I helped with an audit at a jeweller's shop last week. I thought I'd never seen such large and dazzling stones before, but I'm sure yours are equally good, if not better. What shop is that? Milner's, in Lord Street. Marion gave a nervous laugh and leapt to her feet to go to the kitchen, where Archie was boiling the kettle. Carrie followed and watched from the doorway. Did you hear that, Archie? Marion said. Carrie's been working in Milner's the jewellers. Do you know it, Dad? It's a gorgeous shop. She saw them exchange uneasy glances, and then Marion carried the tea tray into the sitting room. Carrie followed, picking up the plate of chocolate biscuits that was to accompany it. Tell me more about diamonds, she said. But Marion's enthusiasm seemed to have waned. Drink your tea before it goes cold, Archie said. Don't give me the brush off, Dad. Carrie felt impatient. I've been working with this team in Milner's, and we all thought we should know more about the business. Come on, tell me all about gold and precious stones. Diamond is the hardest substance on earth, and yet it symbolises love, Marion said, with a sense of duty in her voice. I've yet to find a woman who doesn't love them. Even if the man who gives them lets her down, she might be able to console herself by selling them and getting a little cash back. Though there's practically no second-hand market in diamonds. No second-hand market in diamonds? Surely there must be. Carrie had learned from her bookkeeping work that everything had a value, however old, even second or third hand. There's always a value, she said, though it can get less and less over time. A diamond ring looks much the same if someone else has worn it. It doesn't wear out. Marion was shaking her head. Diamonds are different. Every woman wants them because not only are they beautiful ornaments, but they have come to signify wealth and status. Most diamonds are bought by men to give to women, and women prefer new ones. Would they know the difference? Possibly not by looking at them, but nowadays all jewellery is hallmarked with the date and place where it was made. Diamonds are cut differently now. We've learned how to make them sparkle more, and fashions change in jewellery as in everything else. But there are some diamonds that are said to be worth a fortune, Carrie protested. Think of all those in the crown jewels. Yes, very big ones like the Hope or the Cullinan. They were cut up into lots of pieces, but they were still big enough for a king's crown. There are fancy diamonds too, in rare colours. Yellow and green, Marion said. And they always fetch high prices. But most diamonds mined today are clear little stones. Occasionally the work that has gone into making a necklace or a brooch is superb, and that adds to the value. She picked up a biscuit. When diamonds were first discovered, only the very rich could afford them, and the rarely seen glitter gave both the owner and the stone status. They commanded high prices because they were scarce. But over the years, new diamond deposits were discovered and opened up. Carrie thought it was beginning to sound like a lecture, but it was what she'd asked for. More jewellery was made that sparkled just as brightly, but it could be bought more cheaply, Marion went on. The companies that had become rich and powerful selling to the rich were no longer able to make the profits they had. The rich didn't want diamonds now that they were no longer a luxury, and demand for diamond tiaras and extravagant jewellery almost disappeared. As long ago as the start of the Great War, De Beers persuaded the other big South African diamond mining companies to join together to stockpile diamonds and limit the amount offered for sale. They agreed to charge a high fixed price, and that helped to stabilise the market. De Beers understood that their future lay in selling to the masses, while making diamonds appear to be an exclusive luxury. Second-hand diamonds are only rarely seen for sale, as this too would upset the agreed fixed price. Carrie's father smiled at her. Gold is different again. It has a publicly quoted international price because governments use it to back the value of their currency. When she left to go home, Archie kissed her and said, "Come again. It's good to see you." Waiting at the tram stop, Carrie decided that something she'd said had made Dad nervous and changed Marian's manner. But she'd got what she'd wanted, a lecture on jewellery. She shared Marian's fascination with jewellery, and diamonds in particular. They had a lot in common. Chapter 11. On Saturday afternoon, Carrie went round to see Connie. Her sister had always been her confidant, and she was bursting to tell her about Gerard. She knew she could trust Connie with her secrets. They'd never kept things from each other. She found Connie cleaning the living room and John helping her. "Everything has to be done at the weekend," he said, as he pushed the carpet sweeper up and down. "How are you getting on? I understand you've been at Milner's this week." "Yes," Carrie said, hoping he'd go out and leave her alone with Connie. "It's a lovely shop, and I saw the most marvellous diamond rings and necklaces. Out of this world." "I've got to go out," Connie said. "I lost a filling from my tooth on Thursday, and I've got a dental appointment this afternoon." Carrie brightened up. "My teeth are fine, but I'll come with you," she offered. "That's great. We've always gone together to the dentist, haven't we?" "So Connie said," John smiled. "I offered to go with her, but I've plenty of other things to do. I need to fix up some shelves so I can unpack my books. It's not easy to find time for everything." "Good idea," Carrie said enthusiastically. "Connie and I can have a good natter." "Don't forget, you need to go to the shops afterwards," John said. They set off. "Oh, life was a lot easier when Aunt Prue did all the shopping and cooking and cleaning," Connie mused. "Connie, I've been dying to tell you. I've got a boyfriend at last. I'm in love." "Marvellous news!" Connie was all smiles. "Tell me about him. Who is he?" "Gerard Milner." "Milner, as in that jewellery shop where you've been auditing this week? Some relative of the owner?" "No, he is the owner. He's lovely, Connie." Connie's smile slipped. "But isn't he old? John talked about him last year. He's 44, but we get on like a house on fire." 44? Connie was shocked. "He's twice your age. Nearly as old as Dad. A different generation." "I know, but age doesn't seem to come into it." "But it will. It's bound to." Carrie tried to explain. "You and John have been trying to match me up for years, but I didn't hit it off with any of them. Now, out of the blue... But you hardly know this man." They reached the dentist's, and Connie booked in. There was another patient in the waiting room. They sat down side by side as far away as they could, and Carrie continued to tell her sister in a near whisper how Jerry had broken her spectacles, how he'd bought 3 more pairs for her and helped her clean the lenses, how he'd sought her out at lunchtimes and taken her up to his flat. Connie looked shocked. "Alone? Did he try anything on?" "Shh! He kissed me. He makes me feel like a queen." "Nothing else? Just kisses?" Carrie hesitated for an instant. There had been some heavy petting. "No, not yet. He took me to the theatre on Friday night and asked me to go back to his flat afterwards. He said he prepared a cold supper for us." "You didn't go?" Connie was looking more concerned. "No, I didn't. You remember what Prue was like when we went out at night. She used to lecture us regularly. We must not allow a man to lay a hand on us until he put a ring on our finger, and she meant a wedding ring." "So, no sex yet?" Carrie had to laugh. "No, not yet, but I wouldn't mind. He's lovely." Connie looked horrified. "For heaven's sake, Carrie, Thank goodness you haven't yet. Why do you say that? I seem to remember it was all right for you and John. Shh! We were engaged and tired of waiting. I was totally sure of John and we'd known each other for ages. It was different for us. That irked Carrie. In what way was it different? The receptionist called Connie into the surgery. Carrie, who'd always gone in with her before, tried to read one of the magazines, but couldn't concentrate. This wasn't going as she'd expected. It would have been better not to tell Connie. Nothing was the same since she'd married. The dentist followed Connie out to shake Carrie's hand. All is well with you, then? You have an appointment for your checkup. They got away at last, but Connie was stony-faced. He just replaced your filling? Carrie asked. Yes. I'd only lost half of it. He ground the other half out first. Did it hurt? I hardly noticed what he was doing. I was brooding about you. Carrie had difficulty keeping up with her twin. She could see Connie had not calmed down. I've never needed a filling in the front there. Lucky you. Connie strode on briskly. You hardly know this Gerard. He could be married already. He isn't. I asked him. What if he's lying? In fact, Connie's brow was deeply furrowed. I think he's out to seduce you, make you his mistress. If he's 44 and hasn't yet been married, I'd say there's something the matter with him and he's very unlikely to marry you. Don't be silly. You don't know him at all. Carrie had never been nearer losing her temper with her twin. Anyway, I can't get married for years and years, so what's wrong with being his mistress? I'd settle for that. I think it would be great fun. Don't be ridiculous. You'll ruin your whole life. Connie was angry too. And Prue would have a fit at the very thought. And what would Dad say? So it's all right for you and John and Dad and Marion, but not for me. Carrie was furious now. This was horrible. She'd never fought with Connie like this before. He could get you pregnant, and where would you be then? There are ways and means of avoiding that, as you've told me. Anyway, where would you have been if John had got you pregnant? We'd have coped with it together. I'd have given in my notice at work before it showed. We'd have been hard up, but it wouldn't have been the end of the world. Anyway, with reasonable luck, John will soon be qualified, and now I wouldn't mind in the least. He thinks we should wait till next year, but it would be nice not to have to. You were in a different position. There would be no guarantees for you. It would be a disaster. Hang on a minute. They had reached the greengrocer's shop. Connie was blindly collecting what she needed from the produce set up outside, while Carrie fumed. They walked on to the baker's in silence. Are you staying to have supper with us? Connie demanded on the doorstep. If so, I'll get some cakes. No, thank you. Good. There's not much left to buy anyway. Her bags were filling with food. Carrie took one to carry for her. John thought Gerard Milner might be a bit dodgy. He didn't like him. Well, I do. You've got it all wrong, Connie. We're in love. Why can't you be pleased for me? My advice would be to drop him, and John will say the same. If you get involved with him, what time would you have for going out with men of your own age? Men of my age seem like callow youths. Gerard is a real man. You'll never get a decent boyfriend if you stay with him. I don't want a decent boyfriend. I want him. I love him. You're mad. Carrie sighed. Oh, isn't everybody supposed to be a little mad when they fall in love? She'd expected Connie to be pleased at her news, and coming on top of what her manager had said, she was more than fazed by her reaction. I'll have to tell John. No, you mustn't. Perhaps he'll talk some sense into you. No, Connie. Yes, I feel I have to. Nonsense. I forbid you to do any such thing. I told you because I've always told you everything, but you're not to tell anybody else. Here, take your shopping bag. I've had enough. I'm going straight home. Goodbye. Connie struggled back to her flat with her shopping, feeling more worried at every step. John came to help her put her purchases away. "Oh, I've had a terrible quarrel with Carrie," she burst out. "She's got herself involved with a man. She says his name's Gerard Milner, and they're in love. She thinks she's found her big romance." "With Gerard Milner?" "Yes. She knows you know him, and she's forbidden me to tell you or anyone else. He's 44, nearly as old as Dad, for heaven's sake." "Well, she knows she can't get married now," John said. "And you know, I've got the feeling he could already be married." "She's talking of being his mistress, quite openly. She thinks he'll give her a marvellous time. I told her she's a fool." "Don't upset yourself, Connie." He tried to comfort her by putting his arms round her, but she wouldn't have it. "She's going to ruin her life. I've got to stop her. But how?" "Talk to her. Make her see reason." "I've tried that. She won't listen to me." Connie mopped at her eyes. "We've never had a row like this before." They went to the pictures that evening, and for a couple of hours Connie was distracted from the problem by Charlie Chaplin, but she didn't sleep well that night. "I'm worried. I can't help it," she told John in the morning. "Carrie is going to make a mess of her life. She's not yet 20, and this dirty old man of 44 has persuaded her that sex with him will be a wonderful experience. What am I going to do?" "Tell your father." "She forbade me to do that, forbade me to tell anybody." "You've told me." "Yes, well—" "Connie, if you're worried, you must do something about it. Let's go down to the phone box after breakfast and ask your dad if we can go round to see him this afternoon. He ought to know what she's up to." "Yes. I don't like being the only one in the family who knows. They'll blame me if things go terribly wrong for her. What if she gets pregnant?" "Even more reason to tell your dad." "I thought you were taking me out this afternoon." "OK. Ask him if we can come round for a cup of coffee this morning. Say there's something you want to tell him." When they arrived in Allerton later in the morning, Archie opened the door to them. "I'm intrigued," he said. "What is it you want to tell me?" Connie could smell the coffee as soon as she was in the hall. In the sitting room, with Marion handing round chocolate biscuits, she recounted the story. She was surprised at the effect her words had. Her father leapt to his feet, a crimson tide rushing up his cheeks, his fists clenched. "The dirty rotter! He's a married man with children. Carrie's little more than a child. I'm going to punch him on the nose." "Calm down, Archie." Marion took charge. "Fighting talk will not help in this situation. He's a criminal, and he's taking advantage of a young girl who spent a few days working in his shop. And you, Marion, turned her into a raving beauty to catch his eye." I know. But come and sit down. You're angry and saying things you don't mean. Let's try and think of something that might help." "He needs frightening off." "I can't believe Carrie is that naive. Wanting to be his mistress. She'll end up a gangster's moll if she doesn't watch out." "Archie, please." "Connie, are you sure she meant it? She wasn't just saying—" "She meant it all right. She was deadly serious. She thinks he's in love with her." "All right." Marion was still standing. "I think we should start by reasoning with her." "She won't listen to me," Connie said. "I'll talk some sense into her, the brainless fool," growled Archie. "Carrie is nobody's fool," Marion said. "And I don't think you're the best person to do this." "You do it then." "Archie, shush. I don't know this man. I've never met him. But you do, John. Would you be willing to have a word with Carrie?" "Me?" "I don't think young people want to take advice from their parents. They think we've lost touch with everything. But you're her generation. She'd be more likely to accept it from you." "Why would she? She wouldn't listen to Connie." "She took your advice about applying to Atherton and Groves," Connie said. "Somebody's got to talk to her. Please, John." "I think you're the best person," Marion said. "You know this Milner fellow, and you've worked in his shop in the way Carrie has." I did that twice, but I can't say I really know him. John sounded reluctant. I'll try if you think it might help. Thank you, Marion said. You won't lose your temper as Archie would. Be persuasive and have your reasons worked out. I'll do my best. Connie, I've been meaning to ask if you'd like me to take you to my hairdresser. I wanted to treat you both the same. That's only fair. Connie's hand went up to touch her thick, unruly curls. Oh, Marion, I'd love that. We don't want to look exactly alike anymore, but I want to be made over. I think I'd like mine cut short, really short. Zoe will advise on what would suit you. Shall I try and get an appointment for you next Saturday? Connie was delighted. Oh, yes, please. She felt much happier as she went home on the bus with John. As soon as the front door had closed behind them, Marion turned angrily on Archie. What were you thinking of? She demanded. You completely lost your head and said far too much about Milner. I thought you didn't want your family to know what we were up to. I know I lost my rag. I'm sorry. Connie won't have noticed. John will, but there are no flies on either of them. We're supposed to see Milner tomorrow. I can't possibly work with him. Archie, you've got to. The last thing we need is a scrap between you two. It could upset the whole apple cart. Rod would be furious with you if you did that. You'll have to forget Carrie. Anyway, what's all the fuss? I reckon she's the sort to take care of herself, and John will help her focus. Milner's a criminal. What on earth can she see in him? Archie knew he couldn't let Marion down, couldn't manage without her now, but he didn't want to face Milner. On Monday morning, Rod phoned again while they were having breakfast, asking to be picked up at the station in Lime Street. I'll catch the train that gets in at 9:05, he said. Milner can't see us until lunchtime, but he's something of a friend and said he'd lay on a bit of lunch for us, so we need to be there at 1. Tell Marion to fit in the other jewellers round that. We must try to get them all finished today. That doesn't leave me much time to do it, she complained to Archie when he told her what Rod had said. 2 of the shops are on the outskirts of Liverpool, Archie pointed out. One is in Prescott and the other in Wiston. We should be able to do those 2 before lunch. Provided the owners are in their shops now, Marion said. I have to be able to speak to them. With a bit of luck, they live over them. She managed to contact both owners, and as they set out to meet Rod, Marion said, Don't forget, Milner is a client of Starbright and is helping us to turn over the extra penny. Nothing in your manner must tell him, or Rod, that you've anything against him. If you cause trouble, I'll never speak to you again. Chapter 12. On Monday morning, Carrie went to work only to find that one of the junior clerks had phoned in to say he was sick. Leonard Groves came to her desk. I want you to take his place in the team, he told her. They're to draw up the annual accounts of Patterson's, a large bespoke tailoring firm who have several shops and also sewing rooms and offices in the dock area. The other 3 members have gone directly there this morning. It's not a long walk, or you can take a number 87 tram. He put a faint copy of a street map giving the address of the firm on her desk. Go straight away, he advised. They're just starting this morning. They'll need you. Carrie felt a little shocked. This meant she needed to ring Gerard urgently to let him know. All weekend she'd been looking forward to seeing him again, but while Mr. Groves was smiling benignly at her, she couldn't lift the phone to change their arrangement. Yes, Mr. Groves, she said, and went back to the cloakroom to put on her hat and coat. She saw a tram coming and got on, all the time worrying about how she could contact Gerard before lunchtime. It was never easy in a strange office, and she didn't want anybody to overhear what she said. Tim was one of the team, and none of her colleagues must know about it. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw a public phone booth outside the building. She could ring Gerard before she went in. She slid her pennies into the box and asked the operator to connect her. Jerry, she said, I'm not working in the office today. I need you to come to Patterston's bespoke tailoring instead. Carrie, darling. The sound of his voice brought joy, but he went on, I'm terribly sorry, but I must cancel our lunchtime arrangement. My shop in Wavertree is in big trouble. I need to make an urgent visit. He sounded tense. Oh, what sort of trouble? Nothing disastrous, I hope. It's been broken into. I need to check what is missing. Oh, that's awful. I am sorry. Can we fix another time? What about this evening? She could ring Aunt Maud's school and ask the secretary to tell her she'd be late so they wouldn't be worried. She didn't like telling fibs, but really there was only one reason they'd accept without argument, and that was that she'd been asked to work late. Jerry sounded anguished. I can't meet you today. I'm so sorry. I've missed you terribly all weekend, but I just can't. When? She choked. You said I could come any lunchtime. It just isn't possible. I'm absolutely tied up today, and I'm afraid all tomorrow and possibly Wednesday too are off. Oh, it seems an age since I saw you. Look, I'll ring you on Wednesday. Perhaps we can fix something up then. She was making excuses for him. You're a busy man, of course. Yes. She waited, expecting him to explain. After a long moment, he said, I think I'm a bit off colour, sickening for something, perhaps. Everything seems on top of me at the moment. Carrie was surprised by his change of attitude. I hope you'll find not too much of your stock has been stolen. She could hear he was struggling. Yes, I need to concentrate on my business. Arrange to buy more stock. Look, Carrie, I'm terribly sorry. I'll probably be working here for most of this week, but I don't know how long exactly. You can always get me on this number, and I can find you through Atherton's. Please forgive me. I don't want to lose touch. I couldn't bear that. Carrie was worried when she put the phone down. She must have got the wrong impression. It was almost as though he was trying to put her off. He'd sounded agitated. The theft from his shop must have upset him badly, poor dear. He was not at all like the confident and relaxed Jerry she knew and loved. End of CD 4. CD 5. The day stretched ahead of her, but for once it felt flat. She found it hard to settle down with Tim to do the job they'd been given, but no sooner had they started than she was told someone wanted to speak to her on the phone. She knew it couldn't be Jerry, and was very surprised to hear John's voice. I want to see you at lunchtime, he said. Connie says I must speak to you. You'll know what it's about. Yes, I know, she told him, and I don't think it's necessary. She lowered her voice. I've heard what Mr. Hetherington thinks, and I expect it'll be in much the same vein. Have you dropped Milner? Of course I haven't. There was a note of urgency in John's voice. You're going to see him again? Yes, but it's none of your business. None of Connie's either. We think it is. Will you meet me at Pier Head? We could eat our sandwiches there. It looks like being a fine day. Carrie was cross with him. No, I don't want to. There's no reason for you to interfere. We think there is. Connie's worried about you. If you prefer, I'll come to Patterson's and speak to you there. I've been in the team doing audits at Milner's over the last 2 years. There are facts about him you really should know. What facts? There'll be half-truths, rumours and gossip. I don't want to hear them. People are envious because he's done so well. If you've a grain of sense, you'll meet me and hear me out. Then you can judge for yourself. So where shall I see you? She felt defeated. Gerard didn't want to see her, and John was pressing. I'll walk along to Pier Head. Good. About 20 to 1? Carrie didn't have a good morning. She found it hard to concentrate on the work she was given, and was not in a good mood. John couldn't possibly have anything to tell her that she didn't already know. Nothing would make her change her mind about Gerard Milner. John came to stand beside her while she was looking down the Mersey, watching a tugboat fuss round the West African mailboat as it came into its berth in Prince's Dock. "There's a low wall over there we could sit on," he said. "It's not much of a picnic if we have to stand up." "What are these essential truths I have to hear?" she asked coldly. But she sat down, spread her handkerchief on the wall, and took her sandwiches from her bag. "He isn't very well at the moment." "I won't pretend I have any sympathy. Gerard Milner has a reputation for liking young girls, and he's a bit of a Lothario. He's also a married man." "No, he isn't. I asked him." "Then he lied. I've seen his wife in the shop. I've spoken to her." "Did he tell you she died, or they'd divorced? If he did, I think those must be lies too." Carrie could feel her heart beginning to pound like a drum. Surely this couldn't be true. "He has 3 children, too. 2 sons and a daughter. He bought a manor house in Wales out in the country where he visits his family." "I don't suppose you see much of him at weekends?" Carrie couldn't swallow the food in her mouth. For the first time, she doubted what Jerry had told her. "He goes home to his family on Saturday evenings and comes back to his business on Monday mornings." She could feel the strength ebbing from her knees. "You're not the first either. He'll spend a bit of money on you, give you a good time. He can be very charming, but all he wants is a little fling. To put it bluntly, what he's after is a pretty companion to show off on his arm during the week and a bit of sex on the side." Carrie felt ready to throw up. She pushed the rest of her sandwiches back in her bag. "Milner is not the sort of man you think he is. Also, he's a long-term client of Atherton and Groves, and if your liaison became known, you could be putting your training and career at risk. Connie's worried stiff that you're going to get hurt. So am I, so you must forgive me for being so outspoken. You'll ruin your life and your reputation if you persist in seeing him." She could see the sincerity on John's face, hear the desperation in his voice. "I'm fond of you, Carrie. I don't want you to be hurt, and I'm terribly afraid you're heading for trouble." She pushed herself suddenly off the wall and strode blindly away. She didn't want to hear any more. Had she been a complete fool over Gerard Milner? Even now, she couldn't quite believe it of him. She trusted John and knew he was telling the truth as he saw it. He wouldn't want to cause trouble for her. But she'd asked Gerard if he was married, and he'd said he was not. And he certainly hadn't acted as though he had a wife. She knew she wouldn't be able to believe ill of him until she heard it from his own lips. She made it back to work in time by the skin of her teeth, but she couldn't keep her mind on the job. It took her a couple of hours to calm down enough to make a decision, and it was that she must see him as soon as possible and ask him face to face. He'd said he would be busy all this week, but she'd worry about this until she'd had it out with him. She thought she'd found love, and now she ached inside at the possibility that he'd been deliberately deceiving her. Archie had driven to Lime Street in time to meet Rod shortly after 9 o'clock. Rod breezed out of the station, full of energy and enthusiasm, and wanted to go straight to Prescott. Unfortunately, they'd arranged to pick Bill Dainty up at 9:30, so they had to backtrack to collect him. "How's your mother?" Marion could be relied upon to appear calm and collected. "Far from well, but we're packing, and I hope the sea voyage will do her good. Nothing must stop us getting on the boat on Thursday. I've been away too long already." The visits went like clockwork. Rod drove back into the city and parked in Lord Street, a yard or two down from Milner's shop. It was a wide thoroughfare, bustling with shoppers and traffic. Customers were still going in. "High-class place," Bill Dainty murmured. "He'd be selling top-of-the-market stuff here." "We're to use his private entrance," Rod said. "He doesn't want his staff to recognise us. We need to drive round the back. It's round this block and there's an entry from another street. I know the way." 5 minutes later, Archie was stifling his qualms as Marion led them up an outside staircase to Gerard Milner's private quarters above the shop. Milner met them at the door. "Come in," he said, taking them into a comfortable sitting room. He was a handsome fellow, too suave and a bit of a tailor's dummy, but of course he'd have to wear that dandified outfit in his shop. Archie couldn't bring himself to look him in the eye. Milner was a criminal, and the thought of him seducing Carrie made him feel sick. He would have liked to take him by the throat, but Marion kept giving him warning glances. Gerard Milner was on edge as he waited for Rod Reinhardt to bring his team to be introduced. His daily help had set out the lunch on his dining table in readiness, but he couldn't sit still. He poured himself a beer and put out glasses for his guests. They arrived right on time. He'd just closed the shop. "This is Marion Collard," Rod said, "an expert in gemstones." Gerard liked the look of her. Very womanly. "Hello. I've worked with diamonds, so I know a bit about them," she said disarmingly. "But I'm not all that well up on other gems." "Bill Dainty, our general factotum. And this is Archie Courtney. He's by way of being our goldsmith." Gerard had put out his hand to greet him when he suddenly froze. "Courtney?" "Yes, that's right." An alarm bell went off in his head. Do you have a daughter?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Yes, twin daughters." Milner needed to support himself against the sofa. The floor seemed to be opening up at his feet. Carrie Courtney. Oh, my God! He hadn't foreseen this. What father would willingly shake the hand of a man who tried to seduce his daughter? "You know Carrie, don't you?" Marion was smiling at him. That ratcheted up his fear another notch. His mouth was too dry to speak. He was thankful he didn't have to, as she went on. "She told us last week that she'd been working on your audit." Gerard held his breath. Had Carrie mentioned that she was being wooed by him, chased by him? How would a young girl describe the attention he'd given her? This was worse than he'd first supposed. The room was beginning to spin round him. "Yes," said Archie. "She was very impressed with your shop." He felt a sweat of relief break out on his forehead. So Carrie had said nothing. Of course she had. It wasn't the sort of thing a young girl told her father. "Do you have a family?" Archie was inquiring. "Yes, 2 sons and a daughter." He was flooding with dismay, knowing he should not have said that. He'd told Carrie he had no near family. "He has a nice old manor house in Wales," Rod said. "All ready for when he retires." Gerard felt shaken. He'd had a real jolt to his nerves. Archie and the team would be working in his shop for several days, and they'd be returning from time to time. The implications of what that might bring scared him. He couldn't stop thinking about Carrie. He hoped she wouldn't tell anybody. He must stay calm. "A drink, Marion? What will you have?" They were talking, but he took in little of what they said. He couldn't get the cork out of the wine bottle, and Archie had to help him. The men all asked for beer. He hadn't really seduced Carrie. He'd tried and failed. She'd been too well trained by her aunts. Carrie had nothing to complain about, but he'd have to make a clean break from her. That was a shame when they'd been getting on so well. He'd known he was playing with fire, but she'd turned out to be high explosive. "Well, where's this stuff you have to show us?" Only Rod was his usual breezy self. Gerard told himself he must keep his wits about him as he brought out the box he had ready. He needed these people to make this stolen property safe. Archie could feel the tension rising as he ran his fingers through the stuff in the box. It was of a slightly higher quality than he was used to seeing, but it was nothing spectacular. What about these good pieces you had to bring from home? Rod wanted to know. Milner pushed some foolscap pages at him. These are the ones. Look at this month's police list, he said. Rod whistled through his teeth. Oh, must be worth a bit. They even have pictures of them. Archie knew it was a list of stolen jewellery that was circulated round the shops at regular intervals. Shopkeepers were asked to keep an eye open for the stuff and let the police know if they saw it offered for sale. Old-fashioned, was Marian's opinion, as she scanned the list. But the gems must be valuable. What do you think of these? Milner went to a cupboard and brought out several jewellery cases that were clearly quite old. The first he opened contained a ring, earrings and a necklace set with large gemstones, a mixture of sapphires and diamonds. The next contained a diamond necklace. Archie could feel the increased interest in the room. They're set directly into 18-carat gold, Milner said. The pieces looked heavy, with little glitter in the gems due to the fact that no light could shine through them. Rod picked one up. Ripe for a makeover, I'd say. What about you, Marian? He swung the sapphire string in her direction. They're big stones. They'd stand recutting. That would make them smaller, Archie objected, picking up the diamond necklace. They'd lose some of their value. It would make them a little smaller, but the market value would go up, not down, Rod said. I'll bet you could create something very nice out of these, Archie. Can't make out when this was assayed. Get out your loupe, Marian, and tell us. This one is London, 1854, and this, it's hardly visible, but I think 1862 in London again. They're both very heavy and old-fashioned. Their value would be in breakdown. Gerard said, I also have this, and it's extra special. He opened a square leather case to display a magnificent necklace of Baroque river pearls with graduated strings of clear diamonds cascading from it. Archie gasped audibly with admiration. Wow, said Rod, lifting it up to take a closer look. This is lighter and has magnificent diamonds, more fashionable. What's that other thing in the case? It's a base metal frame, Gerard said, lifting it out. The necklace can be made to stand upright on it and become a tiara. He demonstrated how it worked. What do you reckon it's worth? Hard to say. Rod lifted it to catch the light. A great deal. More than the other two combined. It's lovely, Marian said. Assayed in, let me see, 1880. There's a lot of diamonds here. The biggest must be 5 carats, and there are several other big stones. She was counting. 6 of them along the front here, and plenty of smaller ones. The bigger ones all need recutting, Gerard said firmly. That's the only way to make them safe. Could you do that, Marian? Rod asked. She was screwing up her forehead. No, I wouldn't want to botch stones like these. Bill was fingering the necklace. He whistled through his teeth. Worth a king's ransom. Archie took it from him. It would be a shame to break this up. It's from a different era and very beautiful. Original shagreen case, too. It's too easily recognisable and will have been specially insured, Gerard said. It'll have to be done. Worth a lot more broken up, Rod agreed. Why didn't you tell me you had these before now? I could have taken them to Amsterdam last month. I only saw them myself 2 weeks ago. Archie shivered. Does that mean they're from a recent robbery? They'll be hot property. They came from a big place in Wales. As far as I'm concerned, the sooner they're broken up, the better. A shame to do that. Archie let the necklace run through his fingers. It's a work of art. You won't change my mind, Milner said. That one in particular would be worth more broken up, and the stones would be unrecognisable. There's no other way to make it safe to handle. It would be worth another trip to Amsterdam, Rod mused. What else have you got? Anything else worth recutting? Possibly. Milner prodded around in his box and brought out a brooch and some earrings. I'm booked to return to South Africa on the Transvaal Castle next Thursday, Rod said, and I've got to go. I've already been away too long. But I might be able to catch a train to Harwich in time for tonight's ferry and take them over. There's a lot of work here, Marion said. It'll take a couple of weeks at least, maybe a month. Yes, one of you will have to fetch them back when they're ready. Best thing is to come with me now to learn the drill. What about you, Marion? She was frowning in concentration. Archie knew why. She didn't want to leave him with Milner, and she didn't trust him to keep his mouth shut with Rod either. What about both of us coming? She suggested. We've been working hard, and a break would do us good. A quick trip to Amsterdam won't be a rest cure. No, better if Archie stays here with Bill. You'll get through quite a lot of work while we're away. Marion shot Archie a warning glance. Okay, she said. They both knew it was no good arguing. Rod took a deep breath. Right, we need to get going. Time is of the essence. Archie, I want you to find out about train and ferry times for us, he ordered. Use my phone there, Gerard told him. Obediently, Archie got up to ring Lime Street station. You've got an hour to catch the train, he reported. It has a restaurant car and connects with a train that will get you to Harwich in time for the 5 o'clock ferry. Good. Rod was counting pound notes onto the coffee table. I've had to give Gerard a cheque to get more cash to fund this trip. Gerald smiled. There's always plenty of ready cash in a shop. Marion was stuffing the notes into her lizard skin purse, which exactly matched her large and elegant handbag. She always took charge of the cash and acted as banker for them. You take Marion back to the house to pack an overnight bag, Rod went on. Mine is in the car. Then you can pick me up and take us to the station. What about this jewel case? Milner was waving it towards Archie. It has the name of the retailer on it. It could be incriminating. Can you burn it? I have only an electric fire here. Yes. Archie was feeling like their lackey. What about that tiara frame? It's base metal, Marion said, and has no marks on it. You could drop that in our bin. Most people won't know what it is. Bill can make a start on the more mundane stuff you have here, and, Archie, you could come back after you've taken us to the train. He smiled. The sooner the work's done, the better. Archie was not pleased that Marion was going with Rod to Amsterdam. He didn't want to go with them. That would drag him deeper into Rod's criminal schemes. But he didn't want to stay on in Milner's premises either. He didn't want to be reminded of what that man had tried to do to Carrie. At least it would be restful at home with both of them away, but he wouldn't really be able to relax until he knew Rod was on his way back to South Africa. Chapter 13. Gerard Milner still felt shaky. It had come as a shock to find that Carrie's father was one of Rod's team. Of course, picking up a girl was always risky, but he'd done it before without it causing problems. He prided himself on seeing a danger before it could possibly land him in trouble, but he hadn't foreseen this. At least Rod had taken that hot necklace and other jewellery away. Earlier, he'd asked his daily help to prepare lunch for 5. But first Archie and Marion had shot away, and then Rod, leaving him with Bill Dainty. The last thing he wanted was to entertain that fellow for lunch, but he had to show he had no quarrel with him. He had thought Bill quiet, but once they started discussing the jewellery trade, he was surprised at his wide experience. Fortunately, Bill had an enormous appetite, and Rod ate quickly and wrapped some up to take for Marion, which got rid of most of the food. They carried what remained down to the workroom. Gerard told Bill it was for Archie's lunch, but he wanted it out of his flat before Megan came back. The last thing he wanted was to have them working in his shop this afternoon while Megan was about, but Rod had arranged that they would. He had to keep them apart at all costs. The doorbell rang on his private entrance, and, taking a deep breath, he went to face Carrie's father. "Well, they caught the train, got away all right," Archie reported, "but by the skin of their teeth." There was something aggressive in the way Archie looked at him. It bothered him and made him wonder if Archie knew he'd been pursuing Carrie. He must be careful to treat him exactly as he would if he'd never seen her. He took him straight downstairs and through one of the doors marked private. Bill Dainty was already hard at work on an emerald ring. "You think it's safe for us to work here when your shop is open?" Archie asked, as he lifted the bag of tools he'd brought with him onto the workbench. "A lot of jewellers prefer us to work at night." Gerard was feeling the strain. "It's very difficult for me at the moment, as my wife and son are here and will be for the next few days. You've probably noticed that these workrooms are at the bottom of the stairs going up to my private quarters," he said. "Normally I'd want you to use them so my staff don't see you, but it's even more important that my family don't. So please don't come up looking for me, and use the shop entrance for now." He wanted to impress on them the need to take care. "Did you notice that I've locked us in? It's just a precaution, and if I leave you, I'll lock you in from the outside. But that is the key hanging up there, so you can get out if you want to. Needless to say, I'd prefer you to stay until I come back for you. I'll make sure the coast is clear then." "Don't worry, we will." "I was glad to see Rod take away those 3 necklaces," Milner said. "Keeping them on the premises is a risk. They'd be too easy to identify." "There's still all this," Archie said, looking through the contents of the box of jewellery they were to work on. He selected a diamond brooch to start with. "It's a question of reducing the risks. It will be much harder to prove where these came from, and soon it will be impossible." Gerard tried to smile, tried to appear as normal as he could. "I'll bring you a cup of tea in the middle of the afternoon." He left them to it. He needed to keep an eye on his shop. It soothed him to find that business was slow and the shop quiet. Everything was normal. He was working at his desk and had just settled some small problem with the manager of one of his suburban branches when the phone rang again. Hearing Carrie's voice made his frayed nerves jangle again. Carrie felt thoroughly churned up by the rumours she'd been hearing about Jerry. She still only half believed them. Had something happened that had made him put her off? At about 3 o'clock, she found herself temporarily alone in the office, so she picked up the phone and asked the operator to connect her with Jerry's private number. She was relieved to hear his voice and know he was in his own office. "Jerry, I have to see you." The need for urgency was making her sound breathless. "I know you said you were going to be busy all week, but something's come up and I have to talk to you. Please, can I come to your shop after you've closed it this afternoon?" She knew he was making excuses to put her off. She had to interrupt him. "I'll not stay long, I promise." She couldn't bear to be left with these terrible doubts for a whole week. She was being torn in two. "You could spare me an hour, couldn't you?" He said nothing for a moment or two while she held her breath, and then he said soothingly, "Carrie, darling, of course. Though I'll have all the time in the world by Thursday. Could it not wait until then? I hate putting you off like this. I'm really missing you." "It can't wait. I'm worried," Carrie said firmly. "Tonight, please." His head was spinning. Carrie's father was working downstairs, and Megan would be back within the hour, but he had to keep calm. "All right. Why don't you meet me outside the Royal Court where we met last Friday? I know a quiet little cafe up a side street near there where we could have a cup of tea. I can't do it earlier than 6:15 as I've got to get the stock locked away. Is that all right?" "Yes, thank you. I'll be there." Carrie decided she'd phone Aunt Maud's school and ask the secretary to tell her she was meeting a friend to have a cup of tea before coming home, though she knew she'd face questions about that from Aunt Prue. Later that afternoon, Gerard's hands were shaking as he took 2 cups of tea to the workroom. Megan and Ivor were back and having tea upstairs. Having Archie this close was altogether too nerve-wracking. He inspected the work Bill and Archie had done and was pleased to see that they were careful workmen, perfectionists, and the jewellery looked as though it had just been made. "All it needs now is a new assay mark," he said. "Marion will put that through the Chester assay office when she gets back," Archie said. "What time do you want to leave? I close the shop at 5:30, Gerard told them, "but the staff will be here for at least half an hour after that, locking everything away in the safes. Better to go just before 5:30 or when it all settles down afterwards." "What about it, Bill?" Archie asked. "Shall we carry on working until later? Then we can have a bit of a lie-in in the morning. We'll come in about 9:30. Is that all right with you?" "Yes, fine." Gerard's mind was whirling. "I need to go out for a short time once I've closed the shop, but I'll be back by 7. He went back to his office, thankful that he'd not allowed Carrie to come to his apartment. It was going to be a difficult interview anyway, and the thought of her father being downstairs in the workroom while he tried to deal with her would paralyse his mind. She might shout and cry. She'd probably plead and try to cling to him. At least in a cafe with other people around, she'd be more inhibited. He stretched back in his chair with a groan as he remembered that the quiet tea shop he'd been thinking of closed its doors at 5:30. Whatever was the matter with him? He leapt to his feet to pace the floor. He'd have to take her to a pub instead, and he'd have to be very firm with her and finish this affair once and for all. The danger, as he saw it, was that Rod had put time and effort into selecting this team, and they must all remain on harmonious terms. It was important that nothing should interrupt the work. Archie must never know he'd had designs on his daughter. Any confrontation with him could blow things apart. If Archie turned nasty, he knew enough about what they were doing to have them all charged with handling stolen goods. Gerard made himself sit down at his desk and opened the ledger he'd been working on. Usually, thinking of his success brought comfort, but not today. He knew he had to deal with this problem. It was more important to stay on good terms with Rod and his team and get the work in hand finished. He needed to brush Carrie off. He couldn't cope with her while her father was on his premises. She really turned him on, but in this situation, she could be dangerous to their plans. Veritable dynamite. At 5 o'clock, as the office emptied, Carrie went to the ladies' cloakroom and spent time redoing her hair and putting on more lipstick before she left. She knew she'd have an hour or so to kill before Gerard would be able to get away, and she tried to fill it by walking around the streets. She found the waiting was heavy on her nerves. The shops were closing, and the pavements were full of people rushing for trams and buses at the end of the working day. She studied the displays of clothes in the shop windows, trying to decide what would suit her if only she could afford to buy. She came to a bookshop, but she got her books from the library. Time seemed to be standing still, and there was a chill in the evening breeze. Suddenly she pulled to a halt beside a gleaming new Austin 10-4 Litchfield saloon parked at the curb. She stared at the number plate. Was this Dad's car? It looked like it. Yes, there was his Macintosh tossed on the back seat. That must mean he was somewhere close. She looked round but saw no sign of him. The shops had all closed now, and she couldn't think where he might be. She glanced at her watch and found it was time to make her way to the rendezvous. It was too early for the theatre crowds to start gathering, and there were fewer people about on the main streets now. As she neared the Royal Court, she thought she could make out Gerard's figure striding out ahead of her. She followed him and watched as he stood to wait, a lonely figure under the placards announcing that an Inspector Calls would be performed by the Liverpool Repertory Company tonight. He had changed out of his formal working suit, but looked even more elegant in a smart but casual jacket and slacks. She hung around for a few moments out of his sight on the other side of the road, rehearsing again what she meant to say. She still hoped that John and Connie had got it all wrong. He kept looking at his watch, and she knew he felt uneasy too. She took a deep breath and ran across the road to his side. "Hello, Jerry," she said, trying to smile. "Hello." There was no sign of a smile from him. "Change of plan," he said, putting a hand on her elbow to steer her. "There's a nice pub along here. It'll be quiet at this time, just the place for us." They walked another few yards. "Here we are," he said, and she went in ahead of him and sat at a rickety table in the corner. There were not many customers, and the place reeked of stale beer. "What would you like to drink? A glass of sherry?" "No, thank you, nothing alcoholic." Aunt Prue would smell it on her breath, and she'd told us she'd be drinking tea. "A soft drink, please." Jerry went to the bar and returned with a glass of lemonade for her and half a pint of beer for himself. He sat down on the opposite side of the table. "Now then, what was it you wanted to see me about that's so urgent?" "I've been hearing rumours about you that I don't like and don't believe." She looked him straight in the face and thought she saw him tense. Her heart sank. "What sort of rumours?" "That you're married and have 3 children. Is it true?" "Who told you that?" He was staring back at her, his face open and innocent. John must be wrong. "My twin sister and a husband. He knows you slightly. You told me you weren't married and had no near family, that you were lonely. So which is true?" He was hesitating, and any hope Carrie still had drained away. "So you are married?" He wouldn't meet her eyes now. "Yes. You must have got the wrong impression." "No, it was the impression you meant to give me. In fact, you lied." He turned on the charm, but it seemed a little false. "Why, I wouldn't put it quite like that. I was so beguiled by your beauty that I wanted to see more of you. I couldn't help myself. You have the most wonderful eyes." He was staring into them now with the innocent look on his face again. Was it the expression assumed by the practiced liar? "You must forgive me. You don't understand the power that beauty gives you. I wanted so much to see you again." Her lips straightened. "Flattery won't help." "I was afraid you'd go straight out of my life when the audit finished if I didn't do something. I couldn't resist that first impulse." "What first impulse?" "I know I broke your glasses, but I always meant to replace them. I wouldn't have left you out of pocket. It was pure serendipity that they were sunglasses, wasn't it?" He smiled for the first time. Carrie's stomach lurched. She'd never for one moment suspected that her broken glasses were not a pure accident. She felt sick. "So you went out of your way to trap me? I thought you loved me in the way I love you." She felt tears start to her eyes. "Was I to be another scalp for your collection?" "Of course not. It wasn't like that." "I trusted you." She couldn't believe he was trying to make excuses. "I didn't really believe John. I couldn't until I heard it straight from your lips." "You don't understand." She felt the heat run up her cheeks as anger gripped her. "Gerard, I understand only too well. It's lust you feel, not love. You've been softening me up to be your mistress, just as Connie said. I suppose the wife and 3 children are real. Yes, I can see they are. We could have made it work." "Oh, your wife doesn't mind? Or do you keep her in ignorance?" She could see his patience had snapped. "Carrie, you wanted it. You know you did. You were ripe and ready for it." "You were a dirty old man chasing young girls in the hope of getting them into your bed. You're despicable, a liar. You were using me for your own ends with no thought about how I'd feel. Thank goodness I came to my senses in time." Carrie stood up with a jerk, picked up her untouched glass of lemonade, and emptied it over his head. She heard his involuntary grunt of shock before she threw the glass at the wall behind him so that it crashed and shattered. She saw the other customers turn to look as she stormed out. Gerard Milner took a shuddering breath, pulled out his handkerchief and mopped his face, then looked round furtively to find everybody was staring at him. The barman came over with a wide grin on his face. "4pence," he said, "for breakages." Gerard slapped the coins on the table and took a few sips of his beer, but he felt wet and sticky, and he knew he smelled of lemonade. Worse, he was worried now about how Carrie had learned about his wife and children. She'd said she'd been warned by her sister and her husband, but how had they found out? He didn't like people knowing his circumstances. There were things that had to be kept quiet. He got up suddenly and strode out. She'd drenched his new jacket, and it would never be quite so smart after this, and he'd have to wash his hair. He knew he'd seen the last of Carrie Courtney. It was not the way he'd expected it to end, but at least now he only had to deal with her father. And Megan, of course. He needed to get home and cleaned up before she or Ivor noticed he'd been drenched. Carrie felt an utter loss of hope, a sense of futility, as she waited for a tram to take her home. She'd thought Gerard was showing love and passion for her, intense passion, which she'd certainly felt for him. She thought she'd found the love of her life at last, but all the time he'd been blatantly trying to seduce her. She could think of nothing else all evening. What a fool she'd been! What a stupid fool! Prue had kept her dinner hot for her, but it had dried out in the oven, and anyway, the last thing she wanted was food as she parried her aunt's questions. By bedtime, Carrie knew she was angry not only with Gerard Milner, but with herself too. He'd been right when he'd said she was ready for love, but she should have known she wouldn't get it from him. How could she have been so easily taken in? She'd thought she was far too much a woman of the world to fall for that. She'd never doubted Gerard for a moment. Connie had told her that the first taste of married love was the experience of a lifetime, and she'd wanted that for herself. She'd had a terrible row with Connie when her sister had tried to bring her to her senses. But now she'd calmed down. She was glad that John had warned her off before she'd succumb to Jerry's endearments. She was older and wiser now, and would be more careful in future. She was itching for revenge, but it gave her little pleasure to remember how she'd emptied her glass of lemonade over Jerry's head. That was not nearly enough. Fuming, she thought up all sorts of schemes to get even with him. She'd find out where his wife lived and let her know what he was up to. She'd go to his shop and break his windows, go inside and smash all those glass cases, scatter jewellery everywhere, make a scene in front of his customers. She'd just thrown herself angrily into bed when there was a tap on her door and Aunt Maud came in wearing her flannelette pyjamas and ancient dressing gown. She put a small tray with 2 mugs on the bedside table. "You seem upset tonight," she said, "so I've made us some cocoa to calm you down and help you sleep. Has something happened?" Carrie shook her head miserably. She couldn't possibly explain what had happened, not to her aunt. Maud sat on the end of the bed. "I've been meaning to have a word with you for some time," she said. "I'm pretty sure you're troubled, and I'm wondering if it has anything to do with that man I saw you with in a parked car just down the road." Carrie was stricken. So it had been Aunt Maud who'd passed them, and she'd never mentioned it until now. She felt another wave of guilt, and her cheeks were suddenly burning. "It has, hasn't it?" Maud said gently. "I don't wish to pry, Carrie. I mention it only because I fear for you." She reached for her mug of cocoa, and Carrie took a few sips from her own. It gave her something to do. "I'm all right. There's nothing for you to worry about," she said. Maud's blue eyes were soft and kindly. "You're very young still, and Prue says I must tell you something so that you understand and protect yourself." Carrie was calmer now. She supposed Maud had heard of her trouble from Connie, and that Maud was about to say much the same as John had in order to reinforce the message. "I was a bit older than you," Maud began, "when I met my fiancé. He was in the army, and we were very much in love." Carrie was instantly fascinated. "Fiancé? I didn't know you'd been engaged." "Yes. We were engaged for 2 years, and saving up to get married. We'd even set the date. But the country went to war with the Boers in South Africa, and Daniel was sent out there to fight. I never saw him again." Carrie put out a hand to cover one of Maud's. "That must have been terrible for you. I am sorry." "Oh, there's worse, Carrie, much worse. I did receive 2 letters from him, but they took a very long time to reach me. When I found I was with child, I wrote to tell him. I didn't say a word to anybody until his family informed me that he'd been killed. By that time, my pregnancy was well advanced. I had to tell Prue." "Oh, Maud!" Carrie scrambled out of bed to hug her. "How awful!" "Prue arranged everything for me. She couldn't have been kinder." Carrie could hear the anguish in Maud's voice. "She told our mother, and between them they kept it as quiet as possible. It was a terrible time for the whole family. Dad had been killed in a mine accident a month earlier. I brought huge disgrace on them all on top of everything else. But they were very good to me." Maud mopped her face with the hem of her dressing gown. "How did you manage? I've never heard so much as a breath of this. It must all have been kept absolutely within the family." "It was. Mother had grown up in Liverpool and had already decided she wanted to return, but she was waiting for the mining company to pay out compensation for Dad's death. I had to leave my job, of course, and Prue did the same. She rented a small house in Toxteth, and we moved there, while Mum stayed in St Helens with our brothers, who were still working for the company." "What about the baby?" "It was a boy. A healthy 7-pound boy. I called him Daniel after his father." "You had him adopted?" "I had no choice. I couldn't work and look after a child, and after my family had done so much for me, I had to go along with what they thought best." Maud was sobbing on Carrie's shoulder now. She blew her nose. "That's the worst part of it for me. I've heard nothing of him since I handed him over and signed the adoption papers. He would have been given a new name and a new family, but I have no idea where he is or what happened to him. All I can do is hope that he's happy." "I hope so too," Carrie said. "It must be awful thinking of your own child, your flesh and blood, and knowing nothing about how he grew up." "He was Daniel's flesh and blood too," she said. "I think it would have comforted me to bring up his child. Over the years, I've longed to see him, to have news of him, but it was not to be." "I always thought that you'd had a quiet, uneventful life, Aunt Maud." "No." She'd recovered her composure now, and brought out a small box and 2 letters still in their envelopes, though they looked as though they'd been handled a great deal over the years. "This is the ring Daniel gave me." She opened the box. "A sapphire?" "No, it's a blue topaz. I don't suppose Archie would rate it very highly, but Daniel didn't have much money." "Money doesn't come into it," Carrie said. "I've never seen you wear it." "His death, Daniel's birth and adoption. It was all too painful. That was a long time ago now, Maud. Daniel has long grown up. Perhaps I will wear it." She slid it onto her finger and stretched out her hand to see it twinkle in the lamplight. Then she looked up and smiled sadly. "That is why Prue insists that you must not be out late at night. She fears the same thing could happen to you." "It won't. It's all over in my case, over and finished. At least you know Daniel loved you, and everything would have been fine if he'd lived. My story is very different. I was taken in by a womanizer, an older man who didn't love me but was after all he could get. You need have no fear that I shall be in the same boat. You didn't get near enough for that. Prue and I are bound to worry about you, love." Carrie's eyes were prickling with tears as she hugged her aunt again. "Thank you for telling me. I now understand exactly what a mess I could have got into, and I'll try to be kinder to Aunt Prue in future." When Maud had gone to her own bed, Carrie settled down for the night. She thought about the life Maud had had. She'd always felt closer to her than she had to Prue, and she knew Connie had too. She supposed that was because she was gentler and more used to dealing with children. She remembered the anger and vengeance she'd wanted to shower on Gerard. She realised now that she must never do anything like that. It would have landed her in trouble with the police. Reports would have got into the newspapers, and the whole city would have been able to read about her being an easily led fool. She must write Gerard Milner off as an embarrassing experience. But she wouldn't be able to forget him. It still hurt and would rankle. Perhaps she'd get even with him when the opportunity arose, though deep down she realised that it probably never would. No, she must be satisfied with the company of her family and workmates until such time as fate led her to someone worthy of her love. Archie and Bill had worked hard all afternoon, though Archie kept thinking of Marion and Rod travelling to Amsterdam. He heard the staff leaving the premises, and shortly afterwards Gerard came to let them out through the shop, saying he still had to cash up. Archie dropped Bill off on the way home, and by that time he was hungry but also tired. The last thing he felt like doing was cooking for himself. He was held up at traffic lights in front of a suburban parade of shops and saw that a fish and chip shop was open. That was exactly what he needed. He parked and walked back. Once he had the newspaper-covered parcel in his hands, the delicious scent fueled his hunger. With his mouth watering, he drove home as quickly as he could and unwrapped it on the kitchen table to start eating. The cod was succulent, while the batter on the outside was crisp and savoury. The chips were crisp and hot. Archie ate slowly, relishing every mouthful. He'd done a good day's work and deserved a rest. Idly, he smoothed out the newspaper that his meal had been wrapped in and began to read. Robbery at Cors-y-Gedol Hall. On Sunday evening, while Sir Harold Quincy Downes and his family were attending a church service at Pentrevellin Village Church, daring thieves got away with jewellery worth a fortune. Sir Harold was able to point out to the police paintings of the jewels that were stolen. They were being worn in the family portraits hanging in his home. "This necklace," he said, "and that tiara have been worn by the ladies of my family for generations and have great sentimental value." Archie felt suddenly sick and pushed the food away from him. It would choke him to eat another mouthful. His heart was thumping as he looked at the newspaper page again. It was from the Liverpool Daily Post, and there was a heavy grease spot over the date, making it almost illegible, but he thought it was only about 2 or 3 weeks old. It had to be the jewellery Rod and Marion had taken out of the country. They and Milner had been so sure that would make it safe for them. But would it? He read on. There have been several similar robberies recently in the northwest. They are thought to be the work of a Liverpool gang. Sweating, Archie leaned back on the kitchen chair. The police were searching for the thieves. Perhaps they'd already caught them. They could be forced to say what they'd done with their booty. That would give them a direct lead to Gerard Milner, and from him it must surely be a small hop to the Starbright Jewellery Company. He thought of the leather jewellery case that Milner had given him to burn. He jerked to his feet and went to the sitting room. He'd left it together with the tiara case in the hearth. Marion had told him to put that in the bin, but now it seemed too risky. He didn't intend to light a fire tonight, and probably wouldn't until Marion returned. He rushed upstairs and pushed them under his suitcase on top of the wardrobe, where they wouldn't be seen. Archie had been afraid from the beginning that Rod was overconfident. Now he spoke aloud. "How can you be so sure? Sooner or later you'll be caught, and so will the rest of us. Look what happened to Bill Dainty." Realising that he was talking to himself, he groaned. Then he went downstairs again to get himself a bottle of beer. His knees felt weak, as though they could no longer support his weight. He hardly slept that night in his lonely bed, and got up the next morning feeling exhausted. He wished Rod was here. He wanted him to heed the warning and be more careful. He knew he should not show the page to Bill or tell him about it. Marion didn't want Bill to know too much about their affairs. But once he'd picked him up, he had to talk about it. He could think of nothing else. "No need to panic yet," Bill said easily. "The police have to have proof." "But if they catch the thieves?" "They're unlikely to get a full confession. They'd only have to prove a connection to Milner to throw suspicion on us. They won't say anything about him. They might want to use his services again. They can't get everybody to talk, you know. Anyway, the diamonds are no longer in this country." As soon as Milner let them in, Archie had to tell him about it too. He pulled out the crumpled page of newspaper, still smelling of fried food, to show him. Milner smoothed it out to read on the bench in the workroom, and it seemed to induce the same feeling of foreboding in him. "Oh, my God," he said. "I was afraid that tiara came from a recent robbery." Archie couldn't get it out of his mind, and when he tried to work, he couldn't concentrate. Bill was working at twice the speed he was managing today, but eventually the familiar job soothed his nerves. He'd cut sandwiches for the two of them to eat at lunchtime, as he couldn't believe Gerard Milner was going to continue being hospitable throughout the time they were here. But shortly after 1 o'clock, Milner came to the door with a tray of tea and some fancy food. "I've closed the shop for the lunch break, and I can recommend the raised pork pie. Do help yourselves." Bill didn't need to be invited twice. He was on his feet in a moment, helping himself. "This is very kind of you. Thank you. You're doing us proud. We don't usually eat this well at lunchtime." Archie's appetite had returned now, and he thanked Milner reluctantly, as Marion had made him promise not to upset the man. But he worried and fumed. Gerard Milner was a criminal. He must be to need the services Starbright was providing. He was also an adulterous seducer, but he was bending over backwards to be pleasant. Archie must try to do the same while he was working in his shop. It wouldn't be for much longer. Milner asked about the jewellery market in South Africa, drew from Archie his opinion of the gold and mining industry there. He felt he was being placated. He and Bill worked all day. Milner continued to be attentive with cups of tea, and in the evening Archie brought out the sandwiches he'd made that morning, and they were able to work on. It had gone 7 o'clock when Milner came to let them out. He urged them to be quiet as he led them to his private entrance. Archie felt the tone of their relationship had now been set, and he felt a little less aggressive towards Milner. He suspected that Milner kept chatting to him because he wanted to know more about Rod and Marion and their part in the Starbright venture. Rod had prepared him for questions of this sort, and he kept his wits about him and delivered the edited story. Chapter 14. Archie was getting ready for bed that night when Marion telephoned. "We've arrived back at Euston," she said. He was pleased to hear her voice and started to tell her of his worries. "Not now, Archie. That can wait until I'm home. We're coming up on the milk train. It gets into Lime Street at 5:45 in the morning, and we want you to meet us, as there'll be no public transport running at that hour, and not much chance of getting a taxi. I'll be there. Good. Everything has gone well for us, except we couldn't get sleepers on the train. I think Rod might want you to drive him home. That's okay. Looking forward to being back with you, she said. Archie hardly slept all night. He was afraid he might not hear his alarm and oversleep. His fear of them being picked up by the police was now a nagging anxiety. He would unload that on Rod, and perhaps he'd decide they should all leave in a hurry. He was awake and dressed in plenty of time the next morning, but left without making any breakfast. It was not yet light, and he shivered as he went out to the car. He was at the station 20 minutes before the train was due. The place seemed silent and empty. There was no sign that a train would ever come. He went back outside to the small car park where he'd seen a refreshment van. A newspaper vendor was leaning against it, drinking a mug of tea. Archie ordered one for himself, and now that he was up close, he could see that there was bacon cooking too. "That smells good," he said. "You'll have a hot bacon sandwich as well?" "Yes, please." "Goes down well on a cold morning," the man said, when he handed it over a few moments later, balanced on a bit of paper. "Do you do much business here?" asked Archie. "A little, while the cafeteria inside is closed. Can be quite busy when the train comes in." Archie finished his tea and took the sandwich back to his car. He was glad he'd not be seeing much more of Rod. He would have to return to his mother's house to get her ready to take the train to Southampton. They were booked on the Transvaal Castle, which would depart for South Africa on Thursday afternoon. He heard the train approaching and had to rush back to the platform. The passengers came off slowly, travel-stained and weary. Rod and Marion looked spent, but she threw her arms round him and kissed him. Rod slapped him on the shoulder, but with none of his usual heartiness, and for once he didn't want to drive. "I'm shattered," he said. "Plays havoc with me to spend a whole night without a bed." "I am too," Marion said. Archie made a small detour to drop her off at home first. It gave him plenty of time to explain his worries to them, but they took them as lightly as Milner and Bill Dainty had. Once on the way to Rainhill, Rod dozed fitfully. "I hope your mother is feeling better," Archie said, wanting no further delay to his plans. "Oh, so do I," Rod yawned. "I've booked rooms for us tonight in a hotel close to Euston Station. The ship doesn't start loading passengers until midday, so we'll have plenty of time tomorrow morning to get down to Southampton." On the way home, Archie had to stop at the parade of shops, as he knew there was little food in the house. He'd expected Marion to be asleep in bed by the time he got back, but she was up and looking much more like herself. He was delighted that everything seemed to have returned to normal, and he took her in his arms to welcome her with kisses. "I'm so glad to be back with you," she told him, as she helped him put the household supplies away. "I got into bed and thought I'd go out like a light, but it was our usual time for getting up and I didn't feel sleepy anymore. So I had a bath instead. But I don't think I'll come to work with you. There's plenty I can be getting on with here." Archie wanted to hear more about how things had gone in Amsterdam and was disappointed when she said, "Isn't it time you were picking Bill Dainty up? We've got to keep at it if we are to get the work finished." He and Bill worked hard all day, and when they left, there were only 3 more rings waiting to be done at Milner's. When Archie let himself into the kitchen, there was a delicious scent of roasting pork, and Marion came to greet him with a glass of wine. She was in a happy mood and free with her kisses. He drew her into the sitting room. "I'm dying to hear how you and Rod got on in Amsterdam," he said. "Oh, it was exhausting. A few days in Rod's company would frazzle anybody. He has the energy of a powerhouse. We had dinner with the men who will recut the stones we took. Do you remember Eddie Jurgens from Joburg? He was in Amsterdam too. They entertained us well and kept us up late talking. We enjoyed their company, enjoyed it all. When the diamonds are recut, I could come with you to pick them up. No, I can manage perfectly well on my own. I suppose you'll just put them in your handbag. Archie nodded towards her large lizard bag, now standing on the bookcase. That could easily be snatched from you. How do you know somebody won't be watching when you leave the diamond cutter's premises? What are you trying to do, Archie? Frighten me? He groaned. I want you to be careful. I want you to come back safely to me. Don't worry, I'll be very careful. But I'm more concerned about getting this fortune in diamonds out of Holland and safely through customs. How did Rod manage to get the necklaces out of England and into Holland? He inserted them into the shoulder pads of his jacket. He wears hand-sewn bespoke suits, and he unpicked the sewing in the lining. He said, both shoulders must look equal, and it must be impossible to feel anything from the outside. He got me to painstakingly stitch the lining up again. It had to look as though it hadn't been touched. He reckons trouser turn-ups is another good place for a man to hide things. Where are you going to hide them? I shall have to think about it. Rod says they must be hidden in a garment that's worn all the time. Come on, she said. Dinner will be ready to dish up. But at the table, he went and spoiled it all by unburdening on her more of his fears about being caught. You mustn't worry like this, Marion assured him. Rod has made sure there is nothing to connect us with that robbery. He was sure it had been Rod's original intention that he should be in charge in England, but that Marion had done her best to convince him she was the right person to further his plans. They had a lot in common. They were both sociable and liked a good time. Rod was flamboyant by nature, too confident in his own powers and too fond of his own opinion. At times, Archie found him difficult to live with. Rod gave orders and expected his team to jump to carry them out without questioning anything. He was not always right. As he couldn't leave his business in South Africa indefinitely, they both knew he had to trust somebody, and Marion had done her best to make him feel she was the one. Archie suspected that Rod had made a play for her favours. She was attractive as well as capable. He himself had fallen head over heels in love with her from the moment he'd seen her. But he was not always sure that he was the man Marion wanted. Rod had made Marion both the manager and the accountant of the Starbright Jewellery Company. She made out the bills and collected the money. She paid it into the firm's bank account, and he knew that every few months she sent regular payments to Rod's account. Archie was being left more and more with Bill Dainty to alter or remove the assay marks and polish the jewellery up to look like new. He felt he'd been downgraded, but it didn't matter as long as he could be with Marion. Rod trusted her, and Archie was falling over himself to love and trust her too. End of CD 5. CD 6. It had become routine for Archie and Marion to go shopping 2 or 3 times a week before picking Bill Dainty up. Archie always made a list and discussed what they needed to buy, but once in the shop, it was she who usually made the decisions and paid. Archie saw it as his job to drive and help carry their purchases. One morning, as he followed her into the local baker's shop, sniffing at the lovely scent of fresh bread, he saw that she'd become suddenly agitated. She hurried him back to the car and slammed the door shut. Archie, I'm worried. I think somebody is taking money from my purse. Her large and expensive lizard skin handbag was on her knee, and she was waving the matching purse at him. It isn't the first time. Her face was anguished. I had the same feeling last week that there should be more in here, but I wasn't sure and told myself I must have spent it on something. How much is gone? I'm not sure about that either. Not a lot. 2 or 3 pounds? Well, it wasn't me. She gave him a wan smile. I know it wasn't. I keep that red purse in the kitchen topped up so you can buy petrol and pay for our lunches. It would be easier for you to take money from that or to ask me for more. Rod is generous with expenses. Yes, and it won't be Milner, though I've seen you leave your bag on the workbench in his shop. He wouldn't be interested in small amounts. He's aiming for more than a couple of pounds. Could you be mistaken? Could you have spent it on something and forgotten? He could see her thinking about that. No, I don't think so. This isn't the first time. I don't think I'm mistaken. That only leaves Bill. Marion gave a gusty sigh. Oh, he's a good jeweller, but an ex-con. He'll have learned all the tricks of the trade inside. I think we must take it that it's him. Nobody else has had the opportunity. I'm careful with my handbag. In shops and cafes you are. You hang on to it like a limpet. If it's happened more than once, then it has to be Bill. But I don't know what to do about it. Sack him. It's petty thieving. Isn't there supposed to be honour amongst thieves? That gives us another problem. Bill is a quick worker and he works hard. It won't be easy to find a replacement. I know Rod went to a lot of trouble to get him. Archie remembered the morning Bill had overslept and he'd gone to his rooms to find him. He'd felt sympathy for him having to live in such a dire place. £2 or £3 would be a useful addition to his income. It can't be easy for him to find work, and we pay him well for what he does. You'd think he'd show some loyalty. He can see this job won't last, and it could land him back in prison. What are you going to do? Let's go to that butcher's shop over there and see if he has any fillet steak. We need something to buck us up. I meant about Bill. Archie got out of the car. Marion leaned against it for a moment. If we sack him, it'll take weeks for us to clear the work we've got. That means we'll have to stay even longer before Rod reckons it's time for us to get out. I think it might be better for us to carry on and pretend it hasn't happened. You'll have to be very careful or you'll lose more. I'll keep only £1 or £2 in my purse and a further cash supply in an inside zip pocket of my handbag. He won't have the luxury of time to search through my things. Archie shivered. The situation added to his feelings of insecurity, of threatening danger. It has to be Bill. I would like to sack him. If we can't trust him not to steal cash from my purse, can we trust him with anything? He already knows a great deal about how we work. Possibly he knows too much. I don't want to upset him by accusing him and throwing him out. Better if we say nothing and pretend we haven't noticed. Archie sighed. We'll both have to be more security conscious. A lot more, Marion said. Watch your tongue. Try not to tell him anything he doesn't already know. Archie sighed. I suppose we shouldn't blame him for trying to put a little aside while he can. It's what the rest of us are doing after all. One evening later that week, Carrie went round to see Connie and John to thank them for bringing her to her senses and to update them on what had happened. Don't say anything about it to Dad and Aunt Prue, she said. I don't want the family to know what a fool I made of myself. I've already told Dad, Connie admitted. I had to do something. I was worried about you. Oh, no. Carrie covered her face with her hands. What did he say? He suggested that John try to talk some sense into you. No, John said, that was Marion. He was raring to go and punch Milner on the nose. Oh, goodness, Carrie groaned. You haven't said anything to the people at work, have you? I mean, they know Gerard. I don't want them to talk and the rumours to get back to Mr. Groves. Of course not, John assured her. They'll hear nothing from me, I promise. That didn't soothe her. I hope I can rely on that. Connie burst out. You can trust John. He'd never let you down. There was an uncomfortable silence until she said, John's mother has made us a sandwich cake. I'll make a cup of tea to go with it. Carrie felt things were back to normal when John said, You must know that the men in the office talk about you a lot. You're the only girl they know has been taken on as an article clerk, and you're a real hit since you had that makeover from Marion. Connie giggled. John says he doesn't need to fix any more blind dates with his friends. You've got the pick of the office now. I'm getting asked out quite a lot, Carrie said, but I haven't been out with anyone I'm particularly keen on. You must keep going, Connie told her. Isn't there anyone you fancy? No, you know who I fancied. Don't let him put you off everyone else, John said. That way he'll do you lasting damage. You've got to accept invitations from people you work with. Get out and have some fun. If you find you've made a mistake and don't like the person, you don't have to go again. In the office the next morning, Carrie heard the men talking about a swimming competition at Guinea Gap Baths in Wallasey, where two of them were going to compete. Charlie Tate, a fourth-year articled clerk, asked if she'd like to go with him on Saturday afternoon to watch. She liked him, and it might be fun, and so it turned out. It was a lovely sunny afternoon, and Charlie was good company. He never stopped chatting, mostly gossip about the staff. Neither of their colleagues was placed in the competition, but they joined up with them later and walked into New Brighton to buy fish and chips. They sat and ate them on the promenade, and then went to the show at the end of the pier. They voted it first rate, but by the time they came out, they'd missed the last boat back to Liverpool and had to return by train. The buses and trams had stopped running when they reached Lime Street, so they all piled into a taxi. Charlie got out early on, and Carrie wasn't the last, but they wouldn't let her pay her share. Aunt Prue was still up, and cross with her for being so late. On Monday, Charlie said, "It was a good day out, wasn't it?" "Great, I really enjoyed it," Carrie agreed. "Thank you for inviting me." "Shall we do it again this weekend?" he asked. She was pleased. The weather wasn't so kind to them, but the summer crowds were still thronging the beach. They went to a small cafe on the front for fish and chips again, and afterwards he took her dancing in the Tower Ballroom. He was an excellent dancer, and Carrie felt ready to be swept off her feet. He saw her home and kissed her several times at the gate. John approved of him. "A decent chap. He was on my list to introduce to you, but you've managed to get together without any help." Carrie went out with Charlie a number of times, but somehow she didn't feel the pull of attraction she'd felt for Gerard. It just didn't come. Adam Winters was a manager in the firm and 9 years older than her. She was thrilled when he suggested taking her to a variety show at the Empire Theatre. She thoroughly enjoyed that. His manner was restrained and his kisses brief pecks, and she liked that too. Gerard Milner had put her off too much fondling. Adam lasted only a couple of weeks. He was too stiff and reserved in every way. He seemed an old man already. Clive Dance was the office comedian, and Carrie found him a laugh a minute. But that didn't develop far either. The best thing about being more sociable was that she was getting to know the people she worked with, hearing all the office gossip and feeling at home in their company. When Robbie Wilson began paying her more attention, she held back for a time, but the job kept throwing them together. He was a leading member of the gang Tim had told her about. She thought he was lazy and didn't like him very much. He was quite good-looking, but he'd mocked her for being too keen on the job, and he never did more work than was absolutely necessary. He was a cost accountant and had been working for the firm for 5 years, and was thus experienced, but his status was below that of a chartered accountant. One morning he came to her desk and said, "Do you fancy coming out for a drink sometime?" "I'm afraid I don't drink very much." Aunt Prue had said she mustn't drink in a pub, as she thought it gave young ladies a reputation for being too racy. And of course they must never set foot inside a pub without a man to escort them. "All right," he smiled. "The pictures, if you'd rather." She hesitated, but bearing in mind what John had said, and still with no boyfriend in sight, she felt she should accept. "Thank you," she said. "I'd like that." "Tonight?" "I'm afraid Saturday is the only night I go out. My family think I should stay home to study on weeknights." "All right, Saturday then. It's a date. I'll find out what's on." He came back from lunch with last night's Echo. Not a lot, I'm afraid. There's W.C. Fields and David Copperfield, or the film version of Chu Chin Chow. I can't say I fancy either. Both appealed to Carrie, but before she could say anything he went on, At the Regal there's Peter Lorre in The Man Who Knew Too Much. That sounds much the best bet. What do you think? Yes, if it appeals to you. Carrie made a great effort to look nice. When she met Robbie outside the cinema, he immediately kissed her cheek and put an arm round her waist to draw her up the steps. He was treating her with more familiarity than he ever had in the office. He paid for the best seats, and once the programme started, he put his arm round her shoulders, pulled her closer, and tried to kiss and paw her. "Go easy, Robbie. I hardly know you." "Course you do. We see each other every day. I fancied you from the day you walked into the office." When the lights went on for the interval, he insisted on buying her ice cream and chocolates. When they dimmed again for the big film, his arm came round her shoulders again. His lips went down on hers, and she felt his tongue push into her mouth. She could hardly believe it when his hand slid up her thigh under her skirt. Angrily, she pulled back far enough from him to free her arm and take a hard swipe at his face. The loud slap made some in the audience turn to look. Robbie jerked away, and in the half-light she saw that his mouth had dropped open. She got to her feet, and without another word eased her way along the row and out of the cinema. He seemed to think that paying for her seat gave him the right to neck her throughout the performance. He'd certainly gone too far by pushing his hand almost up to her knickers. Nothing would induce her to go out with him again. Carrie had spent her lunchtime in Bunny's with Ruth and Phoebe, looking over their selection of dresses. Ruth was going to a cousin's wedding and had asked for their advice. She'd received plenty of that, but had not had time to try anything on. Even so, when they returned to the office, they found that the men had returned before them. They were gathered round Tim's desk and were creating a noisy disturbance. Horrified, the girls stood at the door and watched. "How come you can get out of travelling to Warrington every day?" one shouted. "We have to go where we're sent, even if it means we have to get up early to spend hours on the train. We don't get feather-bedded like you. No wonder you're a sissy. Where did you get to today? You're always sneaking off on your own. I'd say you were up to something if you weren't such a sissy." It wasn't difficult to understand that the men were trying to bully Tim. But he turned on them. "What makes you think you're such scintillating company?" he demanded. "Anyway, I don't want to spend my lunch hour guzzling beer and chips like you slobs. It makes you doze off in the afternoon." Carrie realised that somebody had come up behind her, and suddenly an authoritative voice rang out above the noise. "Gentlemen, stop making this noise. Go back to your desks and sit down immediately. This is an office, not a bear garden." Old Mr. Atherton pushed between her and Ruth to confront the men, his bald head shining under the lights. In the deathly silence that followed, his voice seemed even louder. "What do you think you're doing? I'll not have rowdy behaviour like this in my office. You're behaving like louts, not professional men. Mr. Devereux, I'd have thought you would understand that by now." "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." Carrie glanced at Tim. His head was down and his shoulders were bent. "Mr. Redwood, perhaps you would explain what this is about." Tim stood up slowly and turned round. He took a deep breath and looked straight at Danny Devereux. Carrie held her breath, but Tim said calmly, "Just juvenile behaviour, I'm afraid, Mr. Atherton." "Very juvenile." "High spirits that got out of hand. They forgot where they were." "Nothing I can't handle, sir." "I see. Get on with your work, all of you. And I want no more horseplay here." The office door swung shut behind him. Carrie shot to her desk and got out the files she'd been working on, as did everybody else. The silence was intense, but she said into it, "You did well there, Tim. Acted with dignity in the face of provocation." "You should have dropped the fools in the mire," Ruth said. "Told Mr. Atherton that they're ganging up on you. It would have served them right." It certainly sorted the men from the boys, Phoebe giggled. That's a great help to us girls, isn't it? Perhaps they'll grow up soon, Tim said in a resigned voice. Carrie opened a ledger, glad to find that Tim could cope, and full of admiration. She thought he'd handled that in exactly the right way. Chapter 15. One afternoon the following week, Carrie looked up from her work to see Mr. Hetherington at Tim Redwood's desk. Tim seemed to be in trouble. All their work was checked for errors in basic maths by the girls working on the tabulating machines, but she heard Mr. Hetherington saying in the sort of whisper that carried far, "This is a more fundamental mistake. Your figures don't make sense. Either you've put something in twice or you've added something in that shouldn't be there. It'll be good practice for you to trawl through what you've done to find it and put it right." Carrie heard a chortle from Danny Devereux's desk, but she ignored it and settled down to do her own work. Later in the afternoon she noticed that Tim was still struggling. "This is awful." His face was agonized. "I've searched through these figures 3 times and my head is spinning. I can't think straight anymore." The trolley with afternoon tea had just been pushed into the office. Carrie got up to fetch 2 cups. "Have this and 10 minutes rest," she said, and put a brimming cup on the corner of his desk. He took a gulp and swung round to talk to her. "Oh, thanks. I'm certainly in need of it. I can't believe it's 3:30 already." "You're tired." She could see other jobs building up in his in-tray. "Wouldn't it be better to leave that until tomorrow? If you're fresh, you'll probably see the problem straight away." "No. Heathers expects it now. I must seem to be competent. I ought to be able to do it." "He's in with Mr. Groves at the moment." She pulled a chair up beside his. "All right, start at the beginning and talk me through what you've done. Perhaps I can spot it." It took her 20 minutes to find the problem and recalculate the figures. "Gosh, Carrie, I'm very grateful. How do you do it?" "I stop and take a break when my head gets woolly. There's no point in carrying on when you feel like that. You just drive yourself up the wall." The very next day, Tim told her that word was going round the office that she was easy on the eye, but completely untouchable. "You're said to be straight-laced and frigid. Absolutely no fun at all, a bit of a pain." "Oh!" She was taken aback, but had to smile. "I know who started that story," she said, and told him about her outing with Robbie. "Perhaps that'll put the men off you." Tim grinned at her. "Round you like bees round a honeypot. The only time I have a chance to speak to you is on Saturday mornings when we go to the lectures in Fenchurch Street. OK, 2 of Atherton's clerks go too, but they leave us alone. We keep being thrown together, and on the whole we rub along pretty well, don't we?" "On the whole?" She smiled. "How about coming out on a date with me? I have to keep my nose to the grindstone during the week, but I allow myself a night off on Saturdays." "Same here. Yes, I'd like to." "Good. How about next Saturday? Since we go to the lecture in the morning, I'd love to suggest a spot of lunch and staying in town, but I can't. I'm afraid a trip to the cinema is about my limit." "That's fine, Tim." "Good. This is going to be one in the eye for the other men." His slow half-smile widened into a grin. "They'll probably be envious. They talk about spending a lot of cash on girls, giving them a good time in the hope that it'll buy favours for them." "And they don't throw money at me," Carrie said firmly. But then she remembered the best seats and the ice cream she'd received from Robbie, not to mention all the luxuries Gerard had showered on her. "Well, perhaps they do." "I'd like to do that too," Tim admitted. "Everybody thinks I come from a well-heeled family, but my mother is a widow and we live in straitened circumstances." Carrie frowned. "But I understood old Mr. Groves was your uncle." "Yes, my mother is his sister. He accepted me as an articled clerk without the usual down payment, and he put money in so that I'd have the same pocket money as the other clerks. But some of them have an additional allowance from their families." I suppose I do too. My dad gives me an allowance for clothes, and he pays Aunt Prudence for my keep. That's what I mean. But Tim, you go out at lunchtime with the rest of the men and eat in cafes and drink in pubs. No, I don't. I may leave the office with them, but I don't stay with them. My mother cuts me a sandwich and I eat it on the hoof or on the park bench if I can find one. I go round the shops or to the market once or twice a week because Mum thinks food is cheaper there. Everybody thinks I'm weird. That's the gossip I hear on the grapevine. Carrie smiled. Oh, Lord. He looked embarrassed. Why don't you stay in the office to eat? Surely you'd prefer to do that on wet days. He sighed. I did try it, but the girls teased me and they kept talking about clothes and lipsticks. It's considered normal here for the men to go out and the women to stay in. To stay in would mark me out as even more weird. I'd have thought the lads would want to stay in to chat up the girls. Ruth is good fun, and Phoebe's very pretty. My problem is that I don't fit in anywhere. Carrie smiled. You know that isn't true. As you said, you and I rub along all right together. You could stay in and we'd eat at my desk and talk about anything you like. Honestly? Is that an offer? He laughed. Or even better, would you come and eat at my desk? Right. Tomorrow I will. Excellent. You're very kind, and so is Uncle Jeremy. He says he's doing this for me so I'll end up with the means of earning a reasonable living. Carrie hesitated. Is accounting what you'd have chosen as a career? I'm one of those hopeless creatures who's never had the slightest idea what they want to do. I don't seem to have much aptitude for maths, but then I don't seem to have much aptitude for anything. My mother is relieved because she couldn't afford to put me through any other sort of training, but you can see why I have to appear bright, alert, and keen on accounting. I have to take advantage of what I'm offered. Oh, Tim, you're doing fine. Today is just an off day. I'm having quite a lot of those. Carrie was glad he'd opened up to her. Right, so now I understand. We're friends, and I want to go to the pictures with you, providing you don't paw me and want a neck throughout the performance. I wouldn't have the nerve to do that. And I want to pay for myself. No, that's not what I meant. He threw up his hands in horror. I've said it all wrong again. I can afford to take a girl out once in a while. No, I mean it. It might hurt your pride, Carrie said, but I know what straitened circumstances are. Habit makes my Aunt Prue economise whether she needs to or not. I count myself very lucky to have a father who's willing and able to give me money. On Saturday morning, they were required to be in the office at 9 as usual, but they left in time to walk to the offices of the Liverpool Society of Chartered Accountants for the lecture at 11 o'clock. Instead of the suit Tim always wore to work, he wore slacks and a tweed sports jacket. He seemed different, more relaxed. They both had to concentrate on the lecture, but afterwards he said, I hope it's still on for tonight. We made a date to go to the pictures. Yes, of course, providing you're happy for me to pay my way. Again he gave that slow half smile. Not entirely happy, but if you really meant what you said, I did. I'll agree to anything to have you come. What's on, do you know? No, she said. I should have looked in the paper. Here's our tram, and it goes past the Odeon. If we keep a lookout, we might see what's on there. As the tram clanged past, Tim said, it's The Informer with Victor McLaglen and Heather Angel. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, yes, Carrie said. Phoebe and Ruth went to see it on Thursday. They said it was very good, a low-budget film that's turned out to be a real winner. Shall we go and see that then? Tim asked. Perhaps we could stretch to having a drink as well, either before or after. Before, she said. Aunt Prue likes me home by 10. Good. I'll catch the 6:30 tram and hope to see you get on at your stop. Carrie took great care to be at the stop on time, and she saw him waving to her before she got on. She counted the evening a huge success. They both enjoyed the film and got on like a house on fire. On the tram going home afterwards, Tim said, How about doing this again? I'd like to, Carrie was keen. "We saw trailers of the films showing next week. On Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday it'll be Cavalcade. I'd love to see that." Cavalcade was the film of Noel Coward's play, which had been a huge success in the West End. Now, an old film, it was having a second run. "At the end of the week it'll be Shirley Temple in Curlytop," Tim said. "Would you like to see that?" "I'd prefer to see Cavalcade," she said. "It's said to be a pageant of patriotism, the story of one family from the Boer War to the present, taking in the sinking of the Titanic and the Great War." "It would mean going on Wednesday night," Tim said. "But I would like to see it. I missed it the first time it came round." "I'm tempted," Carrie said. "Why not?" He smiled. "We can spend more time studying at the weekend." "Then it would be sensible to go straight from work and have a bite to eat beforehand," Carrie said. "No point in going home and coming back into town. Could we stretch to that?" "I think so, yes. Let's make it a special occasion." Carrie looked forward to it, and on Wednesday she wore her best dress to work. Just before 5 she went to the cloakroom to powder her nose, apply a little lipstick and redo her hair. "I've had a scout round for a cafe," Tim said. "There aren't many that stay open in the evening, but Robbie recommends this one." They had cheese on toast, followed by cakes. A treat for me," Carrie said. "I hardly ever eat out." "I never do," Tim said. "I can't remember the last time." His brown eyes had gold specks in them, and when he smiled at her, she decided that she liked him very much. It was also a treat to take his arm on the walk to the Odeon. It was a dark and chilly night, but the city centre lights lit everything with a warm golden glow. Suddenly she pulled him to a halt. "I think that's my dad's car," she said, peering closely at a parked vehicle. "Yes, that looks like his number." "Very smart," Tim said. "This year's model, an Austin 10-4 Litchfield saloon." Carrie remembered seeing it parked in almost the same place where she'd been killing time waiting for Gerard Milner to meet her. "Gosh, yes, and here he is." She waited until he was nearer. "Hello, Dad." She reached up to peck a kiss on his cheek. "Fancy seeing you here," he said awkwardly. Carrie caught sight of Marion then, who was a little behind, and for a moment she thought the older woman looked put out to see her, but then she was smiling and came to kiss her cheek. "This is Tim Redwood," Carrie told them. "He's another article clerk at Atherton and Groves. In fact, he's Mr. Groves's nephew." She knew Tim would shrink at that. "Tim and I are going to the Odeon." "I'm pleased to meet any friend of Carrie's," her father said, and shook Tim's hand. Carrie introduced Marion. "She's like a fairy godmother to me. She tamed my hair for me." They all laughed, and she went on. "What are you both doing here at this time of night? Dad, I've seen your car parked here before. Are you working at Milner's shop? We're behind it here, aren't we?" "Yes," he mumbled. "That's right." "Sorry, we can't stop now. We're in a bit of a hurry." Marion was edging Archie towards the car. "Why don't you come and see us on Sunday, Carrie?" Then they got in and were gone in an instant. Tim took her arm and they walked on. "Milner's shop is closed at this time of night," he said. "Yes, but Dad does design work for him. I think he and Marion do that sort of thing for several different jewellers. They'd need their shops to be closed so they can confer without interruption." But something hadn't been quite right. "Did they seem on edge?" she asked. "Yes, a little," Tim said. "I do wish you'd forget about Jeremy Groves being my uncle." They both enjoyed Cavalcade, and Tim insisted on treating her to an ice cream in the interval. But Carrie couldn't help thinking about her father. She felt quite differently about Milner now, and she didn't like the thought of Archie working for him. Her father seemed to cloak his life in mystery, and she couldn't help wondering why and feeling curious about what he and Marion were really doing. Even Prue and Maud talked about that from time to time. The next morning, the Chartered Accountant's examination results came out, and Carrie heard that the 2 men put in by Atherton and Groves had passed. John Bradshaw was one of them. She took the news home to Prue and Maud, but he and Connie came round that evening anyway to tell them. Connie was excited. "Marion rang me," she said with a smile. "She's made an appointment for me to have my hair done by a hairdresser. She said ages ago that it was only fair to treat us both alike. I thought she'd forgotten all about me, but it was just that she's been really busy. It isn't easy to get an appointment on a Saturday, so it isn't until next week. Then I asked to speak to Dad and told him about John. It's all happening for us now." "We're so happy for you both," Maud said. She liked a glass of sherry before her Sunday lunch and got out the bottle so they could drink to John's success. "Does that mean you'll have to leave and look for another job?" Prue wanted to know. No, some of us are promoted to team leader once we're qualified, and Mr. Atherton has already told me that he wants me to stay on," John chortled. It was easy to see he was up on cloud 9. "At least now I'll be earning a salary." Chapter 16. It was the Sunday before Prudence's birthday, and Archie was feeling guilty. He owed Prue a lot, but he'd been tied up with Marion and had almost ignored her recently. Carrie came round on a Sunday from time to time, but she didn't bring her aunts. She got on well with Marion, and there'd been some talk of a meeting in town on a Saturday to choose a new dress. Carrie rang up while he was thinking about her to ask if he'd be home this afternoon. "Yes," he said. "Bring Gladys and the aunts with you and we'll have a real Sunday tea." When he put the phone down, Marion said, "Sunday tea is hardly enough to celebrate her birthday." "She'll be 68. It's not an occasion for a huge celebration." "Give her that new Peter Pan collar you made up," Marion suggested. "She'll love it. It's an example of your very successful design and made with your own hands, though it might be better if you don't mention that. She might ask where you made it and you don't have a workroom here." Archie swallowed hard. The gold he'd used for the collar had been melted down from stolen goods, and he'd made it in a workshop belonging to a jeweller hoping to fence them at a profit. It hasn't been assayed," he said. "Prue will understand why not. You can offer to have it done for her." "The gold I used wasn't mine. Really, the collar isn't mine to give." "You gave me one," Marion laughed. "And the workmanship is certainly yours. You made that in Ormskirk at Kelthorpe's shop. He might or might not realise that some of his gold has gone missing, but there's nothing he can do about it either way. He can hardly report it to the police." Archie recoiled with horror at the thought of giving stolen goods to his sister. "If you felt that badly about it," Marion said, "you could offer to pay Calthorpe for what you used." "I could take Prue out for a meal instead," he said. "Take all the family out to celebrate. After all, my son-in-law has successfully passed a big landmark. He can afford to keep a wife now." "A good idea," Marion said. "And you've had great success with your designs and cemented your relationship with Gordon and Mayle. They'll welcome you back with open arms if and when you want to go back." When they arrived that afternoon, Prue said, "Well, you may be living in this country now, but we've seen precious little of you. You must be working really hard." "Yes," Archie managed. He was taken aback. He'd meant to play the work angle down. He was ashamed of helping thieves to fence their goods. "So what is it that keeps you so busy you can't find time to visit your sisters?" Prue had always had an acid tongue. He felt her gaze boring into him. Marion came to his aid. "Archie's been designing for his firm in South Africa. He's had marvellous success. I'm very proud of him." She was speaking rather more quickly than usual. "Have you seen those Peter Pan collars? His design is spread everywhere." "Yes," Carrie said eagerly. "They're very pretty and suit everyone." "I have too," Maud said. "One of the teachers at my school has one." "It's my birthday next Saturday," Prue said. "I don't suppose you've got one for me." Archie saw the warning glance Marion gave him. Actually, he has, she said. He's had one made specially for you. She'd wanted to get that in before he could tell Prue he'd made it himself. Shall we give it to her now, Archie? After all, we've whetted her curiosity? He had to struggle to get the words out. Why not? Marion shot off to get it. Luckily, I wrapped it up the other day. Here you are, Prue. She put the package on the drinks table beside her. Do open it now. Slowly, Prue removed the wrapping paper and folded it carefully. Marion had put the necklace in a cardboard box that had held a bottle of her perfume. Sorry, there's no case for it, Archie said. Well, I can't expect everything. Prue took off the lid and gasped with pleasure. Oh, it's very nice. Thank you. It's 9-carat gold, Marion informed her, and very good workmanship. It's lovely. Let's try it on you. Carrie was on her feet and arranging it round Prue's neck. It fits fine, but your dress has a collar, so it doesn't look good with that. I'll buy you a black jumper for your birthday, Maud said. Collarless, of course. That would be just the thing. Prue had the necklace off and was cradling it in her hands. You don't think I'm too old to wear something like this? No, Marion confirmed. Everyone's wearing them. I'm also thinking of taking the whole family out for a celebratory meal on Saturday evening, Archie said. Are you up for it, Prue? Oh, what a marvellous idea, Dad, Carrie enthused. Wonderful. Later, when their guests had gone, Archie and Marion went to the kitchen to start preparations for their supper. Archie was carving some ham when Marion announced, I won't be coming with you next Saturday. He didn't like doing anything without her. Why not? They see you as part of the family. I often go out without you on Saturdays, and I've arranged to see a cousin in the evening. I didn't know you had any relatives here. Can't you bring him too, or put him off for a week? Was it really her cousin she was meeting, or was this just an excuse? Why was he always so suspicious? Isn't it safer to keep our families apart? I can't see what difference that would make, he said irritably. He'd never met any of her family. It seemed she didn't want to introduce him to them. She was spending time in the week apart from him too. I have to keep the books up to date, she'd explained. Make out bills and look after the cash. It all takes time. There were periods when only Archie and Bill were altering the assay marks. He wanted to be closer to Marion, and he resented these barriers she was erecting. But on those days, she always prepared a meal for when he returned, and she was giving no sign of being bored by his lovemaking. She asked now, Where do you want to take your family? Archie frowned. Perhaps I should cook for them here. Rod said he wanted us to stay away from restaurants. He doesn't want us to get our faces known in any of them. Nonsense, she protested. It won't be much of a celebration for you if you have to cook for everyone. Rod meant that we shouldn't eat out together in the same place every night. Waiters overhear bits of conversation, you know, and get interested in regular customers. He was afraid they might pick up the name Starbright. It's a different matter if you and your family are having a celebration meal out. I think you should take them to the Adelphi. It's Liverpool's best hotel, and they'll see that as a real treat. It's a Saturday, so you'll need to book a table. I'll do that for you if you like. I can do it myself, thank you, he said stiffly. He felt miffed because she wouldn't come with him. In the end, he decided to take his family to the Exchange Hotel rather than the Adelphi. He'd had a meal there with Rod once, and they'd both enjoyed it. If Marion didn't want to come with them, he'd see to the arrangements himself and do things his way. He saw that as one of their little differences. They'd get over it, as they always did, but it left a sour taste in his mouth. He loved her. He could forgive her almost anything, and he knew she'd be her sunny self again by tomorrow. On Friday night, she gave him a wad of banknotes. Rod had advised them to pay cash for everything. "In the unlikely event of trouble," he'd said, "it will make it harder for anyone to trace us and harder to collect evidence of what we're doing." They'd had their instructions from Rod at the beginning. If they heard that the police were asking questions about activities that involved them, they were to pack up everything they wanted to take, drain the company bank account, and drive down to Southampton to take the first passage they could get to Cape Town. If none was immediately available, they should cross the Channel to France. Marion thought Rod had been wrong to say such things, and blamed that for making Archie unnecessarily nervous. "It's unlikely that anything will go wrong, and even more unlikely that we'll need to move with urgency," she'd said. For Archie's family, the invitation to a celebratory dinner at the Exchange caused considerable excitement and preparation. Prue met Maud one lunchtime and took her Peter Pan collar with her to choose a black top for the occasion. She chose a velvet one as Maud's gift, and treated herself to a black jumper as well, so she could wear it on everyday occasions too. After conferring with Connie on Saturday morning and hearing that she did not intend to buy anything new, Carrie decided to wear her best blue dress. Connie was bubbling with excitement on the telephone. "I've had my hair done by Marion's hairdresser, and it looks absolutely terrific." "She's put it up like mine?" "No, I don't have time to put it up before I go to work every morning. She's cut it short. I'm a busy housewife too now, Carrie. I hardly have a minute to myself." "I thought we decided it didn't suit us short." "It does, the way Zoe's cut it. But that's not all. I'm going to announce the most wonderful piece of news to the family tonight. But I've got to tell you first. I can't keep it to myself a moment longer. I'm pregnant, Carrie. Isn't that marvellous? And it's come at just the right moment, now that John is qualified." Carrie said all the right things, and even managed to sound thrilled and excited, but she couldn't help feeling it would move Connie further away from her. Her twin was experiencing all life's big moments now, and she was being left further behind. But no, after more thought, she decided that she herself wasn't ready to have babies yet, and she didn't feel envious about that. On Saturday night, Carrie and her aunts went into town on the tram. She found Connie and John with her father waiting for them in the bar. "Connie," she said when she saw her, "I can't believe the difference that haircut has made. You look absolutely beautiful." "Connie was always beautiful," John said. "I've had it thin too. She's cut a lot of the volume out. She's set it in bigger, looser curls, and it really suits you." Carrie was tempted to have hers done the same way. Getting it up into a French pleat every morning was a bit of a bind. "But won't it all go back to frizzy curls when you wash it?" "I hope not. Yours hasn't, except for the tight waves at the front." "Yes, but I have to pull my hair back hard at the sides and pin it," Carrie said. She turned to Archie. "Where is Marion? Isn't she coming?" "No, she isn't well," Archie said. "She wishes Prue a happy birthday and sends her best wishes to you all." "She said she wasn't well this afternoon," Connie agreed. "She met me and took me to the hairdresser's, but she didn't stay." "What a shame she's missing this. I hope she's better soon." Carrie was sympathetic. She enjoyed Marion's company. It was rare to see all her family together like this. Prue was wearing her new black velvet blouse with Dad's gold collar and a hat to complement her outfit. Dad was in the suit he'd bought for Connie's wedding, while John's suit was the one he wore to work. "Yes, poor Marion. She was looking forward to this," Archie said. "Ah, here comes the bottle of champagne I ordered." "Champagne? Wow." As the waiter poured it, bubbles raced up to sparkle above the brim of Carrie's glass. Archie raised his own glass. "We've a lot to celebrate," he said. "You've qualified as a chartered accountant, John. Prue, it's your birthday, and I've had success with my collar design." They all drank to that, and Carrie felt the bubbles rush up her nose. John said quietly, "Connie and I have another reason to celebrate. So, I ask you to raise your glasses again. We're expecting our first baby." The family exploded with pleasure and excitement. There was an outburst of good wishes and congratulations, and questions were fired at the couple. "Connie, are you going to give up work now? Will you be able to manage in that flat with a baby?" The head waiter came to tell them their table was ready, and Archie ordered another bottle. Carrie followed her family into the dining room, where they were shown to a round table with a low bowl of fresh flowers in the centre. Her chair was pulled out for her, and she looked with pleasure at the sparkling cutlery set on starched white damask. More champagne was being poured for them, and they were still settling down when Carrie looked up to see Marion come to the restaurant door. She was smiling up at her companion, a handsome gentleman who was holding the door open for her. Carrie tried to attract her father's attention, but he was laughing with Connie, and within the split second it took her to turn back, Marion had vanished. Carrie was perplexed. Had it really been Marion, or was she mistaken? Had anyone else seen her? She looked round. They all seemed to be talking and laughing. Aunt Maud, though, sitting next to her, looked surprised, if not a little shocked. Her eyes came up to meet her niece's, and Carrie knew she'd seen Marion too. She'd ask her about it later, when they were alone. She was becoming increasingly suspicious about her father and Marion. There was something odd about the way they lived. Theirs was not a normal household. Did the designs for jewellery that he sold allow them to live at this luxury level? Carrie didn't need to ask Maud. When they reached home that night, they all went straight up to bed. Carrie was hanging her dress in her wardrobe when Maud tapped on the door and came in. "Did you see Marion come into the restaurant with another man?" "Yes, I thought you did. Whatever can be going on?" "She didn't expect us to be there. Couldn't have done. She shut off like a scared rabbit as soon as she caught sight of us. Archie said she was sick." "They're hiding something." "But what?" Neither of them had an answer. Archie decided the dinner had gone well, even without Marion. But he'd really missed her tonight. He'd come to rely on her keeping social occasions on the rails. He'd not only bought too much champagne, but had drunk rather too much of it as well. Marion would not have let that happen. Still, they'd all enjoyed themselves. He'd managed his last duty by asking the waiter to call 2 taxis. He'd put Prue, Maud and Carrie into one, and Connie and John into the other, and paid the drivers to take them home. He had no trouble finding his own car. It was just about the only one left parked in the street. There was hardly any traffic on the road at this time of night, so driving was easy, and he got home with no trouble. He heard Marion's voice, and he knew she was angry. "Archie! Archie, wake up!" She wrenched the car door open. "What are you doing out here? It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been worried stiff. I didn't know where you'd got to. Come on, let's get you to bed." Wearily he got out of the car. He knew what he'd done. He'd pulled into his own drive and fallen asleep at the wheel. He felt terrible. "What a silly thing to do!" Marion was half dragging him upstairs. "You've drunk too much." "I'd have been all right if you'd come with me," he said. Chapter 17. Archie didn't feel much better by Sunday afternoon. Prue had invited them round to her birthday party. "I made the cake before I knew about the celebration dinner," she told Archie, "so the party is going ahead. Besides, it's a way of saying thank you for last night. I don't often eat in a posh restaurant like that. I enjoyed it." He knew Prue would have invited almost everybody she knew, near neighbours and more distant family members, assorted uncles, cousins and in-laws that he hadn't seen for years. He knew exactly the form it would take. She'd held parties for them all over the years. There would be dainty sandwiches without crusts, small cakes and jellies in little bowls set out on the dining table for the guests to help themselves. Maud would be in charge of making enough tea to keep up a ready supply in the 4 family teapots. Carrie would be pouring it out and handing it round. Every one of their cups and saucers would be laid out for use, and more would have been borrowed from next door. Archie did not feel sociable enough for that. "We're supposed to be there by 3:00, Marion reminded him. They were late, but Carrie must have been watching for him because she had the front door open as they came up the path. "Hello, Dad." She kissed them both. "Marion, I was afraid you might not be well enough to come. A shame you had to miss Dad's treat at the Exchange Hotel. Were you hit by something nasty?" Just a tummy upset. I'm glad you're better and were able to come this afternoon." "I really wanted to." Marion was all smiles. "I wanted to see where Archie used to live and meet all your relatives." "Happy birthday, Prue." She presented her with a small indoor rose bush in a bowl. "Oh, thank you. It smells lovely. Come on in," Prue said. "I see you've done some redecorating," Archie said. "You haven't been near since Connie's wedding," Prue said. "You might as well be living in Timbuktu for the number of times you've come here to see us." "I'm sorry, we've been really busy." "Dad, come and see all our new paintwork," Carrie said. She led him up to the landing, leaving Marion with Prue to be introduced to the wider family. "You've done a good job with this wallpaper, but it needed doing anyway. The old paper must have been up for 20 years, Archie said. "It was a lovely do last night. I really enjoyed it." "Wasn't it marvellous news from Connie and John?" "Wonderful. But what about you and Marion?" "I was hoping you'd announce your wedding before now." Archie was shaken out of his lethargy. He was afraid she'd led him up here to ask awkward questions in private. He tried to edge downstairs. "I'm waiting for Marion to say yes. As a husband, I'm not the best catch." "Oh, I don't know. You're not bad-looking, in a battered and well-used way." Archie smiled. "Marion says I look younger than I am." "Dad, you've got to accept that you're getting on a bit, but you've got a new car and enough money to provide a smart house and luxury such as we enjoyed last night, and you're still very generous to your daughters." His toes curled with embarrassment. "I want you both to have a better start in life than I had. You're doing pretty well for yourself now." Her face was open and honest, but her eyes were watching him closely. He knew what she was doing. In her innocent way, she was seeking information that he couldn't possibly give her. He broke away to rush downstairs. Her voice followed, so he knew she was on his heels. "You've done marvellously well, but I still don't understand what it is you actually do. I wish you'd explain." He needed help. He was looking for Marion across the crowded sitting room, but she was nowhere to be seen. "I know you're still designing jewellery for the firm in South Africa, but what are you doing here? Prue says there must be some reason for you to stay. I know you and Marion did a job for, Gerard Milner." Archie's hands clenched at the mention of his name. That rogue was everywhere. He'd like to wring his neck. "It's all right, Dad. I know I made a fool of myself over him, but I've come to my senses now." Archie felt his own senses were deserting him. "Not everything works out exactly as we intend," he said. "Shall we get something to eat before it all goes?" "There's plenty. Nobody will go hungry." Carrie led the way to the dining room and put a plate in his hand. "I made these fairy cakes. They're good, and so are those scones. But I know you like sandwiches. Those are tinned salmon and lettuce." Archie had a plate full of food before he realised what was happening. His mouth was dry, and when he tried to eat, he couldn't swallow. Carrie was hanging on to him like a leech. "I'm afraid you won't stay in England long unless you find a proper job here. I thought Marion said she wanted... Well, she did imply she'd like a job with a jewellery firm too. I've seen your car parked near Milner's shop on a couple of occasions. In fact, I met you there that time I was going to the pictures with Tim." That took Archie's breath away. Of course she had, but he didn't want anybody else to hear what they were talking about. Worse, he was now thinking about designs into which he could set the diamonds from that tiara. The plan was that he'd make them up in Milner's workroom and they'd be sold through his shop. The very last thing he needed was for Carrie or anybody else to know of the real connection between him and Gerard Milner. As I said, not everything works out as we'd like it to. He knew he'd made a mess of that. Why hadn't he told her there was a restaurant near there that Marion liked? That might have put her off the scent. "Hello, Dad." Connie came over and kissed him. "Thanks for last night. It was a wonderful evening." "How are you keeping? Nobody seemed to ask that last night. Should you still be working and be out and about so much?" "Dad, I'm fine. It's all so exciting. We're full of plans." "Are you thinking of moving house?" Carrie asked. Archie was sweating with relief. Connie had deflected Carrie's attention at last. He caught sight of Marion talking to his brothers and made haste to join them. He wasn't going to leave her side in case Carrie came back with more questions. He offered her some of the food on his plate, and she took it. But she was deep in conversation with George and his wife, and that left Archie with Bob. Bob drew him away from the others. "Let's get a breath of air," he said, and led him out to the backyard. It was drizzling, and they had to find what shelter they could against the back door. Bob made sure it was firmly shut. "I feel I have to warn you," he said. "That fella you had in your car the other day, Bill Dainty, he's got a criminal record as long as your arm. He fenced stolen jewellery amongst other crimes." Archie shivered. His brother's eyes, full of suspicion, were scrutinising his face. Bob was just 2 years older and his favourite brother. He'd always been so friendly before. "Why are you associating with him?" "I didn't know." He couldn't meet Bob's gaze. "He's an experienced jeweller. He's knowledgeable about gold. Knowledgeable about a lot of wrong things, too. You shouldn't have anything to do with him. It could land you in difficulties." Archie took a deep breath. He had to do what Rod and Marion would do, keep his wits about him. "Thanks for the tip-off. I didn't realise. Didn't know Bill had form. And I thought you were on traffic duties, not detective work." "I've been on general duties, an ordinary area plod for the last few years. But we all know him, and keep an eye on him. He's been in and out a few times, and he's now reduced to doing almost anything to keep body and soul together. Any shoplifting, petty pilfering in the district, and we take a look at what Bill Dainty and his friends have been up to. Often we need look no further." "Oh, hell." Archie felt weak at the knees. Marion would have a fit if she knew that. How had Rod managed to recruit him? "I'd stay clear of him if I were you," Bob went on. "You don't want his reputation to rub off on you. But I'm through with all that. I applied to go on a course at the police driving school a few months ago, and I've just heard I've been given a place to do it next month. I'm really looking forward to it. I've had a taste for driving since Connie's wedding day, when you let me have a go on your new car. I'll be doing car chases in future." He opened the back door and let them into the kitchen. "Ugh, quite nasty out there now. We mustn't get wet." Archie couldn't get his breath. He felt ready to collapse. He leaned against the sideboard and closed his eyes while the others watched Prue cut her birthday cake. Nobody seemed to notice that he didn't sing Happy Birthday with them. As soon as he decently could, he said his goodbyes and took Marion away. Once in the car, she said, "You weren't in the party mood in there. George said you looked as though you had the worries of the world on your shoulders." After what Bob had said, he felt as though he had. "Bob told me—" A woman stepped off the pavement in front of him, and he had to slam on the brakes. "The fool," Marion said. "Why can't she look before she does that?" They were moving again. "What did Bob tell you?" "That he's going on a course at the police driving school. He's pleased he'll be patrolling in a car in future instead of on foot. I think he's looking forward to car chases and all that." Archie had had time to consider what he'd been about to say. It had terrified him to hear the police opinion of Bill Dainty, but they already knew what he was like. He and Marion had discussed it and decided they needed to keep his services. No point in frightening Marion all over again. She said, "Bob clearly isn't a detective, then. Rod will be glad to hear that. And one less thing for you to worry about, Archie." I don't know about that. For once he hadn't told her the full story. Carrie was asking awkward questions too. "She's bound to be curious. But you did all right. You said you didn't tell her anything new. Just keep stalling her." "That's easier said than done. Once Carrie gets her teeth into something, she's like a ferret." He tried to keep a grip on himself, but he couldn't go on hiding his worries from her. "And I hate having to work with that Gerard Milner and pretend he's a friend. He's a terrible man, a cad, trying to get off with Carrie like that." Marion laughed. "Oh, she's over it, even if you aren't. Just relax. Everything is going well, ticking over quietly." But Archie couldn't relax, and he wished Marion wasn't so confident about it being safe to carry on. He felt he was falling apart. She was sympathetic. "Perhaps we should ease back. Not work so hard. No more night shifts. It's getting to you, Archie. We need to eat out more too. Whatever Rod says, we haven't the energy to cook for ourselves, not working the hours we do. There are lots of small cafes in town that do a reasonable lunch, and they're so busy that nobody's likely to notice us. We won't keep going to the same one, but we'll eat lunch out in future." After a breakfast of only tea and toast, Archie was usually hungry by 1 o'clock. To keep them going late in the afternoon, Marion organised 2 tins to be kept in the car for use when needed, one of cream crackers and another with cheese. When they reached home, it would be getting on for 8 o'clock, and the first thing Marion did was to open a bottle of wine. "This is our time," she'd say. "Let's forget the treadmill for a few hours." It had always been Archie's chore to provide their evening meal, but she began to help him more. "We only need a light supper," she said. They'd noticed a shop selling steak pies, and once a week they bought 2 at lunchtime to reheat for supper with a little salad. Occasionally, they bought fish and chips on the way home, and they always kept plenty of eggs, bacon, and sausage for other evenings. End of CD 6.